Hey, welcome to another episode of Feedback and Friends. I am so happy to be joining you again. I know it's been a minute. I know it's been a couple weeks. It's been crazy since we had the competition. So hopefully you all are back, excited, have been making new tunes. I know Nathaniel has been really holding it down. So shouts out first of all to Nathaniel Wyvern, the best, the coolest, the raddest, the awesomest, best friend I could ask for doing this. And shouts out to all of you for being here. So what have we been up to? Like, we actually just had a meeting today about where we're going to go from here. We had our round one of competition. We had a lot of really cool workshops and streams and events. And, you know, definitely we want to hear from you for things that you would like to see from us. You know, we are at your service. We are here to just show you cool stuff about technology, creativity, a little bit of psychology, and practical stuff as well. So we are going to be focusing a bit more on YouTube and stuff, because I've noticed that, you know, everyone has different schedules. A lot of people, especially in the Discord, you're from all over the world. And so it may be difficult for you to get on at certain times. So we thought, you know, we should do some stuff that is a little more permanent and at the same time keep the community going and get you all involved. So if you have been a guest, if you're enjoying it and you are thinking you want to do some streaming or some recorded content, hit us up, because what we're doing here is basically collective. We are here to support you. We're here to do all the icky things together, you know, the social media, the promoting as a collective, so that we're not just all doing stuff for ourselves. So without further ado, speaking of friends, we have an amazing friend today. We've got, of course, Nathaniel, who you all know, and we have the incredible illexxandra from New York. I would love for you to do a brief intro, because you do so much cool stuff. Like, I can't even pretend to know the depth of it. So maybe just introduce yourself and let everyone know a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, sure. Hi. We're right next to each other, even though we're in different cameras. I love it. Yeah, I'm illexxandra. I live in Brooklyn, New York. Been a full-time DJ producer since 2006. And that includes many different hats, from the very local to the very international, and from the very rock star-y to the very proud to say I DJ weddings and corporate events, and have hosted karaoke for quite some time. And but then of course put myself forward as a rock star, and produce everything from bass music. I mean I DJ anything you can name a thing. I'm ready to go. Producing, I put myself forward as a bass music producer and drum and bass. I have a song on Hospital, which legitimizes my place in drum and bass history. And and this year, like for example, I played at Boomtown in the UK. I played at the Nyege Festival in Uganda, which is like the most recent thing, the most recent trip anyway. And yeah, and then beyond that, I do I come and go on the VR chat club scene, doing parties in VR. And I tried, especially in like 2020, 2021, spent a lot of time designing VR environments, just as pieces of art, like, you know, exploratory sculptures, and also to support dance parties. And then I've been getting really deep with visuals lately. which is a lot of different things wrapped up in one. I've been doing a lot of Resolume Wire, which is the node-based editor, I guess, for clips inside of Resolume, and it's really fun. I'd love to do actually like a tutorial just on Wire. Not that I have my head wrapped around every bit of Wire, but I definitely get jump down rabbit holes on like, oh, I need a clip to do this. It's going to be way simpler if I build a wire patch than like a series of channels in Resolume that like awkwardly bump into each other, and then I just go down that rabbit hole, and then I end up with these elaborate, as you do with any kind of node-based creating, these elaborate patches. And like, it's better if I explain it as I do it than try to show you like the finished patch. But that also includes pursuing interest in AI generated images, but also more compelling to me is animations. So I've been making like AI animations for the use in visuals. I used my Unity backgrounds from doing the VR stuff and feebly teaching myself C# so I can use Unity, which I do. And it's kind of use Unity underneath Resolume. And my mission with all these things is to make the visuals. I'm a DJ first. I'm a producer first. It's still like always going to be the most important thing, at least in this phase of my life. So my mission with the visuals is to, like when you go to a party with visuals, my complaint is that it's like anti-dance. It's like for you to stop dancing and watch TV somehow. And so my mission was to make visuals that were highly audio reactive, highly like MIDI pad reactive. So it's like, the VJ is very actively rhythmic and musical to be an interplay with the dance, for everything to be like a musical gesture, a dance gesture. So that's sort of my mission with that.
Oh my God, amazing. So TLDR, illexxandra is a huge nerd who does awesome stuff. So yeah, I would definitely love to chat more about this. FF4C is saying my latest album art is partly AI generated. So something cool that illexxandra was showing me and getting into this last week was the big elephant in the room in the music industry. You know that AI has come for your visual art. AI is coming for your sounds and music. So her and I were poking around a little bit on these new betas of AI generating samples. And from our first attempt, we made a lot of really like schizophrenic, orchestral, like weird sounds. So, I mean, it's definitely not going to take your jobs just yet. Just yet. But we are just nerding out on this new thing. It could be possible that you could be able to prompt an AI to create samples like orchestral, that maybe you can't create because you don't have that there. So I think it's always going to be up to the human curator to make it good, because I don't know if you've been seeing these AI portraits where the person has like 8 fingers. So, there's still room for human improvement. But I would definitely love to geek out a little bit today on that, and we can talk about that later. So we're going to kick off with our very first Q person, which is going to be Load Us. And is there feedback requests specifically for this?
Looking to get general feedback, especially on the mix. As always, I appreciate you guys' hard work.
Aww.
Exclamation marks.
Wicked. Well, all right. Feedback on the mix it is. I'm going to just, I'm going to have to, it might be a little bit, mutey today. I'm going to try my best not to accidentally mute us, but I got to make sure to mute us so that Nathaniel doesn't get feedback. But here we go. right, our first entry coming in strong from Load Us. Special guest, before you go first, the chat was asking how long you have been producing for, how many years?
Since about as long as I've been a full-time DJ producer since I started DJing first, and then I stopped doing other things I was doing in 2006, and then it was really just like middle of 2007 I started doing the Baltimore club mashups and things like that.
Nice.
Yeah, and then quickly into other stuff for sure.
Wicked. So what do you think about that?
I liked it. I liked it. You gotta give people the compliments first, right? But when I'm giving criticism, it's all in the service of. It's all love. It's all love. But sometimes I get real like nerdy and serious about this, that, and the other thing. But it's all love. Like I should start with a smile because all the other stuff a smile should be implied. So a lot of people are commenting on the highs. I think it's fair to say that should be looked at, but I think it's really hard to talk about mix without. I mean, I feel very passionately that mixes need to be done in the context of references, because every genre has a different target. Every scene has a different, vibe target, but very specifically like, frequency spectrum and transient response and things like that. And even within a genre, there's so many subtleties. So it's like the goal is for it to fit, to meet your expectations of what it fits, what constellation it fits in. So I think it's fair to say that you should look at the highs, but like where you end up with the highs can be very, very different. Like what's the appropriate target? Like I just want to caution people not to chase their tails, because that's the whole thing with producing is you go to sleep one night thinking it sounds great and you wake up the next day thinking, oh, what did I do? And the only way to fix that in my rule book is referencing. And we, like in this short format, like, and also with copyright and stuff, sometimes it's hard to like bust into like all the different references you might have. But when you're doing the work, actively reference. I also think that maybe with the highs, like thinking about how sustained or transient the highs are can help with like if you still want a certain amount of crispiness, but it's harsh on people's ears, that might be like that there's the highs are too sustained, or the width of the highs are too sustained, and so don't just like go in with a butcher's knife on the highs. Like it doesn't just mean get a shelf and jack it down. Like there's other ways to deal with that. So the rest of it, I think it's really nice. In some of the gaps, in some of the areas where like right at the drop, can I play or should I refrain from playing when we're talking?
Yeah, you can play it.
Okay. So like it gets arrhythmic enough in this area that there's not like an indicator when it's a surprise when the beat of for me it was a surprise when the beat of the drop came in. So either go into it with more more leading the people on a little bit more. Let me just play it real fast. There we go. Yeah, so there's so much of a gap there. Pause it. There's so much of a gap there, and there's so much like the little repeated bleepiness ends, and it's just like a decay, and there's nothing to hold on to. So the dancer, like you want to titillate the listener and the dancer, and you want them to be gratified when the drop comes. And in this, I mean, it's just a small example, but in this circumstance, no one knows when it's going to come. So it's like, oh, when do I start dancing? And like they'll have fun within a couple beats, but you don't want that moment of confusion. So either have some sort of like very backgroundy thing that keeps repeating, like you have, or you can have. I mean, there's many ways to solve this. You could have like a pre-transient going into the drop, because it really does lose time. So the pre-transient can relieve the discomfort side of that surprise, but something. And then there was another one, like I think right here. Yeah, I think it was just, I think I felt the same there. It's not really like as severe, but I think I felt the same there because the spin down, it's going to sound pedantic, but the spin down doesn't like, it gets off the grid, which is fine. Like that's what spin downs do. But I think it again, like makes you lose a sense of time. So you could like fake, like you could like warp the spin down so that it's still sort of like being on the grid, like all the like transients in it are being on the grid, or do another, swoop pre-transient into the next beat. I'm a big proponent of paying attention to the rhythm of glitches and the rhythm of, like people will be like, oh, this is an appropriate time for a sound effect, like a spin down or some just like, staticky glitchy thing. And that's a great impulse to have. But I think people overlook the internal rhythmic structure of those little things. It's just like, let me splat a sound effect and that's enough. But for me, I really do internalize what the rhythm of those little figures are. So I don't keep that in mind.
Wow, you are killing it right out of the gate. I don't really have much to add to that because those are all such good points. So I'm just going to ask Natty, do you have any other things that Lexi didn't mention?
I mean, I think that if you're going to look at the high end, do it in a way that you're basically creating more layers out of your sounds. That way you can keep the core of your sound intact. The mid-range especially is fine. You just want to focus on the highs. So that means more parallel processing. And then you can basically just split up the EQing and make it so you're not getting all these weird resonances and stuff that way.
Oh, that is a good idea. I like that. And I think, maybe I'll add something on top of that. A lot of the time people, they think linearly in a way that they shouldn't when they produce. Like they think, okay, here's my lead synth line, here's my pad, here's my bass. And then in a lot of complex productions, they're often moving between different elements to create that same part, but your ear is not hearing it because it's blended so well. So then when you go in the studio and you're like, why is my lead sound so flat? It could be that you need to do more automation or more like Nathaniel said, splitting that lead into slightly different layers that can help. Like there's just so many different ways to look at it than just the obvious. So amazing stuff. Next up we got Caleb Daggers. Any comments for that, Natty?
Yep. Tried my best to incorporate Nathaniel and ill-esha's suggestions from my previous submission back in July into this project.
Ooh.
Mainly seeking feedback on the mix up until the 340 mark, but open to any other suggestions. Your guidance is greatly appreciated.
Amazing. All right, Caleb, let's check it out. just realized I was muted. Oh, this is gonna be. I'm getting better. I'm getting better, everyone. I have like buttons that flash at me now. Yeah. So I was gonna say I don't completely remember how this sounded before, but to me it sounds pretty good now. I do agree with what someone in the chat said. The snare is really sticking out to me. It's like, it's just, you know, I've had this situation where sometimes you're just like agonizing for hours and hours. You're like, oh my God, what is wrong with my track? And you just like go to sleep and your ears fatigue. And then sometimes it's just as simple as like change the kick or change the snare. So in this case, it sounds like you've probably spent a lot of time EQing it, but I think it's just not the right snare. It's really like poppy and resonant and kind of round, and like it just needs, you know, I'll see what Lexi thinks about it, but I definitely just like the rest of the tune was like very tasteful. Everything's coming in. There's some nice glitches, but the snare just keeps pulling me back to So I don't know what you think about that.
I not to contradict, but it didn't really bother me that much. I'm just gonna listen to it a little bit more. The snare. I do think it sticks out a little bit in terms of groove. The snare, like I don't know. I love moving entire channels of like kicks and snares around, like nudging them early and nudging them late. I don't know if that's what you did, but it sounds like a little early and kind of an ungroovy way to me. And I think, you know, I don't know. I'm often giving that advice is nudge the kicks and snares. Just it's not even with any like specific rule. Like you should always move one way and the other way. But like a groove will very quickly go from wooden to groovy. You know, with just a little, you know, a few milliseconds here and there. And of course you can move each one independently, but even just moving the whole, you know, snare. Frequently it's the snares early and the kicks late, but it also depends, you know, what you're going for. If you're going for really wonky or something, which this is not, of course, you could have the snares late. There's no hard rule, but some sort of at least trying it, even if you leave them at, you know, at where they started. I think you should always try. I think you should always think about that. And so in addition to the actual like choice of snare, how much something in this case the snare can stick out also has to do with the groove. And that was the thing I noticed by just playing it just now, is that it felt like just like a little stilting and like not enough early to be like, this is J Dilla, you know what I mean? And not, but so just play with the groove of the snare. I mean, you also might switch it out, EQ it, bring it down a little bit, or any number of things, but it doesn't, and maybe I have a different target in mind of what they're going for, but I can imagine genres where a snare that draws that much of attention to itself being appropriate. My thoughts on it overall were the first thing I noticed that kind of nagged me was the shape, the groove of the side chain, the ducking that's happening, like the obvious ducking. Of course, you can side chain just for it to make space and try to have it not be obvious, and then you can side chain for dramatic effect, for style effect, and it's like to me it feels very, the side chains feel very wooden. So I'm gonna listen to it briefly. Yeah, it's almost like a square even, you know, or like a very heavily curved thing instead of something that feels like a swell, like blah, blah, but it's more like blah, blah. It's like it doesn't really support the groove in the way I'm hearing it right now. So I would say play around with that. I don't know what you're using for that, but if it's like LFO tool or something, play with the curve, and if it's a traditional compressor, you know, maybe just like pull out the release a little bit, or the knee, exactly, and try to get get that to be as musical as possible, because I like what you're going for. I just think that a phrase I use with my students a lot is, which no one knows what I'm talking about, it just only means anything to me, is turn the screws. Like, do what you're already doing, but heighten the tension. So like I remember visually that it was around here. There are a lot of little things, let me see, that I think are good and could just be better. Let's see. Yeah, so it's all those like transforms, all the the I don't know what you would call them, but where it's like taking a sustained sound.
Ear candy.
What? Ear candy?
Ear candy.
Oh no, that's
it's
all.
our favorite word.
All the different parts are ear candy. Plenty of things qualify as ear candy. These like, where you mute a sustained sound, or old school people call them transform scratches or whatever. Yeah, it's just like da-da-da-da-da-da, like all of that seems very like, if it were MIDI, which I don't think it is, it gives me the feeling that they're all the same velocity. You know what I mean? So maybe like do a little like filter motion on those or something. So it's like instead of da-da-da-da-da-da-da, it's like da-da-da, like where it's like just feels more human and musical. I think those will like dramatically increase the impact of the emotion that you're pulling out from doing those things.
Killer. Natty, what's your thought? Anything to add?
I mean, anything to add? That you can automate your sidechain. It doesn't have to be the same every time.
Ooh, sexy. And might I add, anti-props to Nathaniel, because I start everything with Amin now. It's like I've just absorbed his personality. So like the other day I was like talking to my mom and she asked me something. I was like, So I don't know if that's happened to any of you.
I'm evil.
Can you just switch it up with like, perhaps I've pontificated and have concluded, or it seems, or it would appear. Anyways, love it.
The other thing, rounding back to the snare. I mean, right now it's when it sounds like it's just the fundamental tone of it is actually not matching the fundamental tone of the bass.
Yeah, it's just something. It could just be EQ. It could be something. There was just something that was a little bit weird that just was stealing my attention. I mean, did you hear that, Natty, or like, am I just?
Yeah, it's just like, I feel like it should be more of a rather than a.
Yeah, could you please make that sound again for people who want to sample you? More of a.
Rather than a.
Yeah, one of these days, feedback sample pack. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Wicked. Next up, we have a favorite from our very first round, epic showcase performer, Didactic MK, and I believe that it is her birthday. So happy birthday!
Birthday to you,
Scorpio. And Moldy Soul is suggesting the term ear gravy. Ooh. I don't know.
Ear gravy. That just sounds horrible.
That sounds like when I've been listening for too long and I'm trying to figure out a mix. I think at that point it all becomes ear gravy. So did Miss Didactic have any specific feedback that she wanted?
Yep. It's my first time engineering a song with these new plugins and keeping integrated loofs in mind, so would like some general advice to highlight anything that sounds off or incredibly amateur. Is it good, or is it in need of drastic improvement? Thank you.
All right. Can't wait to hear.
How are you, Didactic? Yeah, I feel alright. Despite we were stuck in the house all the time, working on me, myself and I, understanding my egos, restructured my mind. There's Sam and Jordan or Jacob and Jub. COVID-19 got us feeling so rough. We're back on our motives, they're back in the clubs. I'm not looking no more, I'm not looking for love. You can run after me, I'm not chasing no more, I have no time to speak. And I know that I swore I'd give you all of me, but I too am deserving and worthy of this. You can run after me, I'm not chasing no more, I have no time to speak. And I know that I swore I'd give you all of me, but I too am deserving and worthy of this. Straight from divinity beyond the infinity, my life is a pandemic and it changed the way I look at me. This side up, I'm fragility, the present is showing me the memories that triggered me. Your inner child is missing me, mind thinks you're the enemy. This has to be a fantasy, this ain't where I'm supposed to be. You're opposed to me, your trauma reflects off me. Ironically, it's meant to be divine serendipity. Ironically, it's meant to be divine serendipity. Ironically, it's meant to be divine serendipity. It seems you are a part of me, but you are far apart from me. I feel you in this part of me, I feel you in when you parted me. I'm sorry for the part of me that triggers you, cause that's a bit hard for me. Should I reconsider, cause we're confused and that's really alarming me. You can run after me, I'm not chasing no more, I have no time to speak. And I know that I swore I'd give you all of me, but I too am deserving and worthy of this. You can run after me, I'm not chasing no more, I have no time to speak. And I know that I swore I'd give you all of me, but I too am deserving and worthy of this. I'm deserving and worthy of this. I too am deserving and worthy of this. Fresh like diamonds, paparazzi, click, click, snap, quick, sent from heaven. There's no predicament too particular. My soul is infinite, that blew my mind. So magnificent, I'm in my element. Channel the rhythm, it's time to get mine. Chasing no more, I have no time to speak. And I know that I swore I'd give you all of me. You can run after me, I'm not chasing no more, I have no time to speak. And I know that I swore I'd give you all of me. You can run after me, I'm not chasing no more, I have no time to speak. And I know that I swore I'd give you all of me, but I too am deserving and worthy of this. You can run after me, I'm not chasing no more, I have no time to speak. And I know that I swore I'd give you all of me, but I too am deserving and worthy of this.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I gotta say I am like super, super impressed, Didactic, because I heard some of your earlier stuff to now, and I really see like huge improvement as a producer, because I know that you're a rapper and that's your roots, and producing is something you're kind of like filling in the blanks for. And like this, first of all, the idea is killer. This is like such a party rockin' tune, and I would have so much fun watching you do this live. Like I can kind of see you, since I've already seen you just crushing the stage on this. I think for me, I'm gonna let Lexi comment on the production part, but I'm just gonna say vocal processing. I think as a vocalist, that should be like your focus right now, because you know you have good delivery, good timing, all of that is good. But two things, like it needs a little bit more tight vocal processing, a little bit, and I'll tell you in a second. And then the other thing is a little bit more variety, because you know right now the verses and the chorus and the other vocalist, I guess, is I think there's two of you, right? I don't hear any difference when like the chorus happens to the verse. Like it's all very kind of like single tone, and we want a difference, you know, we want to hear you in the verse and then we want something else to happen. So there's so many things you can do. You can do like a layer of a radio effect on top. You could do like a different chorus or stereo spreader or any of that stuff. So first of all, think about like doing different things between verses and chorus, and maybe even slightly different things for the vocalist, because even though I know your voice, I was trying to figure out like which one was which, just because the whole thing was so processed the same. So that's the first thing to really think about, is changing it up. And then as far as like vocal processing itself, I don't know what tools you have at your disposal right now, but usually, here's the funny thing, like when it comes to like gimmicky, like all-in-one channel strip multi-effect things, I usually don't recommend those to producers learning, because I tell them learn the individual components first, you know, like learn a compressor, learn an EQ. For vocal production, I kind of do recommend these channel strip all-in-ones, because vocals, for one, they can be more tricky, and there's also so much in like how they work together. And when you're just learning vocal production, a lot of them also come with some good presets that you can kind of reverse engineer and say, ooh, that makes my voice sound more airy. What's going on with that? Oh, I see. They've got a little bit of like shelf high EQ. So I think overall, like, you have to do a bunch of EQing on this because there's a little bit of like a resonance, which is almost like when you're on stage in a stage mic. The way that sounds compared to a recording is a little bit how it's coming across to me, like almost like a live, dynamic mic recording. So the difference between dynamic and condensers, right, is there's a bunch of differences the way that they work, but in difference in the way that they sound is that a lot of the time the dynamic is kind of what I call the toilet paper effect, right? And actually, fun fact, this is not a dynamic microphone we're using. This is a condenser stage mic. So this is a sensitive condenser mic that is meant to be used on stage and to handle being dropped, loud monitors, and other things. Because the reason you usually use dynamic mics are because you need something that can be mishandled and can deal with loud things and be less sensitive. Whereas a condenser in the studio is more sensitive, and it's going to pick up your breathing, your high end. And I feel like there's like a little bit of a high quality professional sparkle that needs to happen. And if you don't have like, a fancy Neumann U87 mic, which like I don't have either, there's definitely some EQ, compression, and just overall tricks that will make it sound more professional. And that's why I'm sort of saying, like, if you invest in something like Isotope Nectar, which is a vocal strip, it's just going to give you a lot of combinations of things to really learn, because like that is how I learned. I learned with Wave CLA vocals, which I still use sometimes, and now I use Isotope Nectar as well. And so that'll not only teach you how the components work, but the relationships between them. Because like I said, vocal processing, a really touchy thing. And one last thing before I hand it over to Lexi, when you use reverb of any kind, do not forget to EQ it, especially a lot, especially for vocals, because a lot of the time, I'm talking to you right now, like let's just pretend I was singing, and I've got like some mid-range. I have kind of an alto. I have a pretty low voice for a woman, so it's kind of like in that mid-range. And then I put a reverb on it and I don't EQ it. And what you're going to get is lots of mid-range, and it's going to get more like this, or it's going to sound like this. So one thing that I've found that just gets things more professional right away is often just low cutting the reverb. Not sure what reverb you're using, but most reverbs these days come with a built-in EQ on top of it. If your reverb doesn't, you can use it as a send. If you're using Ableton, you can put it in a rack and you can make two chains, not the rapper, the effect of a wet chain and a dry
Two
chain.
chains.
We need like a really cheesy drum roll effect for like all of our bad jokes too. That's the next. It's funny, like I've been doing this for a year and I still haven't made sound effects for us, and I'm a sound designer, so I'm really sorry. I was too busy learning all the video stuff, but if we trap Lexi into hanging out with us more, maybe she'll do fun stuff for us. So I will hand it over to you now.
Well, trapping me would require making me move to Europe, which they all want me to do. Actually, I would love to. I assume you're in the UK. I'd love to meet up actually, because I'm going to be there in January. But the reason I say that is because I love this song a lot. I like everybody's submissions, and I have a wide range of interests. I also really, really like this. I mean, it very much overlaps with my interests. And I know how hard it is to do this, to nail the producing and to nail the vocal. I mean, of course, there are things to fix or to consider improving upon. But to like nail something like this, like I know what that takes. And even if you're a savant or something and just like came up with this overnight, which of course no one ever does. It's always background. But like regardless of what came, whatever. I don't need to go down this road. This is great. What am I going to say about it? I agree that about the vocal chain thing. I think that ultimately, I mean, I think putting a vocal multi-effect thing is great to do because vocals are kind of like harder than other things. Like mixing vocals, there's like a lot of nuance. There's a lot of nuances and a lot of things to learn about. I think all of our goals should be the same as non-vocals, is to have mastery over all the individual devices. It's just so much going on and so many like expectations, expectations, pop expectations and genre expectations that like I agree to use a multi-effect as a starting point. And I'm like not a big fan of wave stuff, but I agree with the CLA vocals. I think that's like a really great place to start, and usually it's really cheap to pick up.
Yeah, and she's saying too that she has an older computer. I think the CLA vocals will still work on that computer because it's an older plugin.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be easier than maybe some things. Speaking of reverb, I'm a big fan of at least experimenting with not using a lot of reverb on vocals and instead using a delay and like just using like a short delay where you play with the feedback. I think that is frequently what pop producers are doing anyway, and then maybe some light reverb after that. But I think the meat of that is frequently not from reverb. It's just kind of like a trick of the ear. I strongly agree with EQing reverb. I think it's just absolutely necessary, and especially with vocals. So far I'm just sort of like supporting what ill-esha is saying. I do have other thoughts. I think with all the songs we've heard in any genre, I think it's crucial to think of, well, who's in the spotlight and what's supporting it. And when it's a vocal / pop related track, it's or like radio focused track. But for anything, obviously the vocal is the soloist most of the time. But here you have two vocals; they're given even focus when I don't think that's appropriate. And then so it's like when the vocals are overlapping, they're kind of fighting for attention. And then also with the synth, the bass synth, I think all of those things when they're coinciding are fighting for attention. So I think you got to get more specific with at which moments, because there's the main, I don't know who's who, I'm sorry, but there's the main vocal and then there's the singing at a certain point, and they're like on the same plane, and then the main vocal stops and then the singing keeps going. And so like I think it's very necessary to bring down / EQ the singing vocal in a way that is only supporting the main vocal, and then let that blossom when the main vocal goes away. And similarly with the bass synth, like, and these things can be moment to moment. They don't have to be phrase by phrase. Like at any moment, something is the soloist, and everything else is supporting it, because our brains can't handle more than that. It's just how brains work. So as detailed as you want to go into it, every moment has to have that concept.
Beautiful. Natty, I saw that Daniel McPhee was asking you for vocal. I mean, you're a vocalist. All three of us are vocalists, so I would love to hear your chain or your tips or any sort of contrasting perspective from Scotland.
I mean,
I'm
God damn it, now you're making me question everything about my speech patterns. Damn it. Anyway, as far as tutorials go, I don't really have any solid recommendations because I just haven't I don't watch that many production tutorials. Most of them tend to faff about in a way that doesn't really appeal to me. But one, there is no universal vocal processing chain because every voice is unique. So even if you do go and watch a tutorial, you basically have to take everything it says with more of a, it's teaching me how to use the tool than it is to how to do it from me.
Mm-hmm. True. Very true. Very smart advice.
And the other thing is basically structure. Your structure should determine how you process your vocals. And one of the common things in pop production is to keep the verses minimal in terms of effects and, a light reverb rather than a really strong present one, less vocal doubling, so you get just a really simple, straight and clear vocal for your verse, because that tends to be the wordiest section, so you need everyone to understand it as clearly as possible. And also because it creates contrast. You can increase the density and the processing in your chorus.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was talking about structure, made me think a little bit. Something I thought of as we were listening is there's not really a break. There's not really a relief from the vocals. This is wonderful.
Or the bass.
I really love this track. I really love it. I want to hear it. I want to have it when it's done to play in clubs. I really like it. From a DJ's perspective, there's not a lot of room to play. And there are plenty of songs where the vocals don't give you a break. But I would really encourage you to have some sections where the vocals are just small interjections, not just for mixing, not just for mixing in and out, but so the dancer can groove too. It's I think this is, when you're the vocalist, you want to hear yourself, and that's great. But you're good. People should hear you, but give the structure a little more breathing room. It's tough because this track's already almost 4 minutes, so it's tough to like. I'm not trying to encourage you to have a longer track, but have some breaks in there where it's not just all vocals all the time, or just like minimal interjections, so it's like functionally an instrumental section.
Very, very cool. Very great advice. Then happy birthday again, Didactic. We love you. Thank you for supporting us. You're amazing. And hopefully we get the pleasure of having you at one of our live events. Didactic came to Bristol. So yet another reason for you to move to Bristol. Keep talking her into it. We're trying to get illexxandra over to Europe, where her many talents, I think, will be more appreciated. A couple people asking about skipping queue. So we have a small donation system. It's basically $3 if you want to skip it, and $5 if you want deluxe feedback, which means we listen to the track all the way through without talking, and we get really deep. These are just literally to keep us going. And so it's, you can do it by donating to Streamlabs. It's scrolling across the bottom of the screen, or you can subscribe to us, which will get you deluxe feedback, since it's like the same price. So
I've just linked Demotai to you. They subscribed just a second ago, so that means they are entitled to
deluxe feedback. We need another ding 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 ding
ding ding ding ding.
All right, what was the feedback request on that? And thank you, Demotai, for the subscription.
Any feedback? This is a whip for the new Aquaman trailer.
Oh, like
no NDA, don't worry.
Okay. Wicked. Love it. Amazing.
That's a first.
Okay. First of all, I love the variety that we get on this show. It is so amazing. And so for anyone who ever has a question, as you can see, all genres are welcome. We just love music. Some people may not know we have the EDM production Discord, which is connected to this. The only reason we call it that is because we are linked. We are connected to the EDM production Reddit. So we just like technology and music. I do a lot of scoring, or not a lot, not as much as I'd like to, but some. And I loved it. I mean, people in the chat were saying they wanted a drop, I think that this could be just as much of a cool electronic track as a trailer, which is a great thing to say. It means that your melodies and your tensions are enough to make people want more. And illexxandra was talking about sort of like making the dancer want to dance. It's like, I feel like you're actually demonstrating really good tension and release. Like, this is kind of what we're talking about, is getting people wound up to the point where they go, what's about to happen? Give it to me. Right? So I always say that like music is kind of like a relationship when you perform it. You're trying to get people wanting more. You're trying to get them to want to come back to things that you've introduced. And you're trying to hopefully have a pleasant experience. At least that's what I aim for in relationships. I can't really speak for anyone else. But I think that the relationship with your audience is really about making them want more, because that's when you've made a good song when it ends, and the whole rewind thing comes from that. It comes from people being so into the track that like they need to go back and start it again, because they can't even just like bear the fact that it's only going to be X minutes long. So that is like something that can get very annoying at a show, but I think in real life you got to make people want the rewind, and that's what you did.
Yeah. I don't actually have much to add. I think I agree with all that. I think the tension and release is really good. I do want to generally comment too, even though this is my first time on the stream. Certainly, in my mind, all genres are welcome, and also, literally anything, folk music, whatever, throw anything at us. But also, I saw when we first started some like people, being mildly insecure about skill level. I feel the same about skill level. Like all skill levels are welcome. It's not about like dominating each other with goodness or like imagined goodness. Everybody it's a journey. We're all on a lifelong journey together, and that's just reality. And we're at least the three of us, here to just help with wherever you are. Don't be afraid. Don't be intimidated by other people's submissions. Is the thrust of that. As far as what we're listening to right now, I love that we're listening to film music, trailer music, or scoring in general. I think, I don't know. The only thing I have to add is, don't be afraid to be more active with the non-traditional things, with the as going beyond the composition and the contact patches. At least give yourself, don't restrict yourself from being more producey with it. I'm sure you don't want it to sound overdone. I get that. I wouldn't either, but being a little more involved, interjecting more with filters, filter movement or gain automation. I hope I'm expressing myself well. I just don't think because it's orchestral music that those things are inappropriate. In fact, I'm sure in anything we've ever heard, there's a lot of attention to that, even if it sounds very transparent. It's like stage makeup in theater. Like the best stage makeup is the makeup that doesn't draw attention to itself. That you don't think they're wearing makeup, even though they're obviously wearing makeup. And I think that applies to gain and filtering and EQing, even on acoustic things.
Wicked. Natty, anything to add?
I mean, don't take this the wrong way. And yes, I know I just said it. I'll be self-conscious forever. It doesn't sound like you said this is a whip for an Aquaman trailer. I'd love if it felt more
watery, wet.
I felt like
moist.
It just doesn't quite feel. Oh God. Moist. Yeah, it doesn't quite feel like I'm going on an underwater adventure. It feels like more like I'm off to, some sort of really land-based thing. Epic forest music type deal. Where everyone's got bows and arrows and stuff. I mean, maybe not, don't look at your progression. That's fine. That's cool. I think melodically it's interesting. But just see if there's any articulations you can use that can maybe give it a bit more of a swell. Maybe even layer in some Foley into your higher end percussion sounds. Something that sort of gives us the water aspect, the wind, the sand, the salt. It's... you can't smell music, but there are all these other sonic associations we have with those spaces, and you can kind of hide them in the music.
That's actually, I didn't even think about that, but that is killer advice. And Rags wants, I think he just wants to hear your voice say the word moist. But I'm going to take the bait and I'm going to say
Never.
Reverbs and delays are some of the easiest ways to make yourself sound watery. You could even I would experiment with weird reverbs, not just typical ones, because Aquaman is a supernatural being. So, when you're designing for characters and for stories, you don't have to necessarily have the boundaries of reality. You're not trying to make a real sounding reverb, right? You could make a weird digital algorithm strange space. So convolution reverbs you could actually import some water sounds into them and have everything with literal water drop resonances on it, or you could try a reverb like Polyverse Comet, which allows you to automate between types of reverbs, and it gives you this kind of like floating, airy, like when you move in between it. So yeah, Natty, you're great. I didn't even think about that, but that is totally right. So shouts out to everyone who just donated. You're all epic. This is a word that my friend Josh absolutely hates. So just in case he ever watches this, we should just say epic as much as possible to bother him. But all right. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to Hultia. Thank you to Baco. Thank you to Nivea. I see you. You're going to be the next few. So I believe Hultia is next. Yes, Natty?
No, that was
the one we did?
The one we just had.
Oh.
So Baco's next.
Baco's next. All right, Baco. And Baco has a video submission. What's going on with that?
Yeah, just a second.
Also, Baco, I'm
did
really...
the mix on this. Clowns and Hollow Weird played everything in it. Also, I did the visualizer.
Oh, very cool.
So it's his visuals.
All right, so we will check that out, and let's give a look. That's... Go Natty.
Your lighter flame doesn't want to go out, Isha. It's too hot, so hot. I mean, I had to, I'm sorry. That time was deliberate. Anyway, this is hard to give feedback on.
All right, fine.
It's
Lexi will go if you don't want
onslaught
to.
of sound. This is an onslaught of noise. And I feel like there's not a super coherent melodic thought to it. It's just sort of progression upon progression upon progression, and then, okay, the song's done. Only it's about 5 minutes long or something like that. 5 minutes?
4.
Yeah. It felt a little bit longer, but I think maybe it's just because it's just so constant. There's no break.
Yeah, I think by the time the break happened, I like wanted it like a minute before, you know, like it was a little intense. And my only thing to say before I give it to Lexi is that there was one lead guitar that I felt was like so loud compared to the drums and the bass and the other stuff that it almost sounded like a stream of you jamming over a pre-recorded track where like that level was too loud. I know it's really tough to mix guitars, especially. So yeah, maybe I don't know if you have more experience.
Yeah, I mean, you are excellent at shredding, and I hope the world recognizes that you are excellent at shredding. As far as the track, yeah, I agree. You know, give people more breaks. I don't want it to sound like the same exact advice I gave earlier, but give people a chance to catch up. You want people to anticipate the awesome. You know, if people need a chance to reflect on the awesome and anticipate and thirst for more awesome. As far as and I do. I mean, I'm a sucker for drums, but like even in the most conservative kind of modern metal way, I think that the drums deserve to be louder. And if that means you got to do some like a little bit of side chain trickery to duck the guitar very, very subtly, then so be it. But the drums deserve a better seat at the table. The guitar itself, I think mostly the lead is a little too loud relatively to everything else. I also think that this is something I would play with and before giving a decree on. But I think that my instinct is that the transient, like you could take the recording you have, which you don't re-record it. Take the recording you have and do some sort of transient processing on it. I mean, you could do it with a compressor, but I would get like some sort of fancy actual transient designer, perhaps from Neutron, because Neutron has a multi-band transient shaper, which I like a lot. Because in some of the pedal stuff, some of the effects mush some of your runs together, and some of the just like specificity of your awesome shredding. So that's my main stuff. Drums up. And also there's a point where can I shuttle? There's a point where I think here-ish where there's this moment, and then you go back to shredding. I'm gonna do it in a second. You go back to shredding, but like we're used to you shredding at that point, and it's also like a little more abstract. I'm doing my best to describe in words the feeling that I'm talking about. I think it's okay if there's a section, and I think it's the section I'm about to play, where your continued virtuosic shredding does not have to be in the spotlight. Like I said earlier, you always have to think about who's the soloist and who's the support, and which can change on a dime all the time. I think it's okay, in fact, would be like nicely artistic if that shredding, like, because we've gotten used to it, right? It's not novel anymore. So it's okay if it's sort of like decoration to the other stuff, because there's the lower guitar. Yeah, I think around right there. Here? Yeah, I'll do it though. It's fine. Yeah, like it's so extra there, and you're really going wild. It's okay for that not to be the spotlight. Like you can let the just like I've said in a couple of other contexts, you know, it's okay to just kind of like ride out the groove. In drum and bass, they often call it the tear out, where you know, like you don't have to think so hard anymore. You're not really thinking about where the melody's going or what the vocal is saying. You can just kind of like ride it out for a while. And I think that it's a good analog to this. Like you can let the like the lower stuff just like groove for a while and let this very intense shredding, the most intense shredding of the song, just kind of be like this like ostinato kind of, just like let it be this dreamy decoration instead of like still in your face constantly, you know? Like, cause people still know you're awesome at that point. Like, it's not like you don't have to keep proving that you're awesome. Like, it's okay to experiment with that being it more in the background is all I'm saying.
Wow, that is deluxe I should just like call you on the phone every time somebody subscribes for deluxe feedback. I'll be like, yo, Lexi, what are you doing? I don't care. Answer. This is how we're going to trap her. We're just going to like force feedback her until then she's like, I'm part of this.
I'm bad about giving less than deluxe though. Like I'm passionate about everybody's project. I think I see everybody's, I do my best to see everybody's project from their eyes. And then when I'm in that headspace, I'm just like deluxe or bust, you know, like I want to give them everything.
Amazing. Well, sorry that I forgot to thank you, Clowns in Hollow Weird. I didn't see your subscription, but thank you. And thank you, Gloaty Music. You two will be up next after Nivea, like the skin cream.
Mm-hmm.
And what does Nivea have to say?
They literally just told me to read the title out, so here we go. Close your eyes. Let me take you on an adventure.
I'm going wherever he wants to go.
Nivea, is that you? Nivea, is that you?
Wow, I just went on such a journey that I got caught off guard and forget to press the stop button. Woo, what a journey. Um, no, I mean, there's two things I'm going to say. First of all, welcome back, Natty. You all right? Everything's good?
Why can't I hear you?
Oh, wait a second. That's because I need to turn it back on for Natty because there's 3 mutes. So right now I wasn't actually muted, but I was muted to Natty. Oh, the fun of craziness of streaming. I really like that. That is totally my vibe. Like that is the kind of stuff that I make and that I listen to. But right now it sounds like you either need a vocalist or you need a lot more things to not make it feel like it's waiting for the vocalists. Like right now you have this beautiful sort of, you've set the stage, but nobody's on it. Right? Like you have some really cool like backdrops and there's no actors. Like I need somebody to come in, and it doesn't have to be a vocalist, and it doesn't have to be like a lead that takes up all the space either. Sometimes this kind of problem can be solved with little Foley, little textures, little edits, just things to like move it. Oh, there are vocals, but you lot said no bootlegs. It's so difficult. It just is like it's just one of those things where sometimes we get a strike and sometimes we don't, but thank you for that. So in that case, if there is a vocal in there, I still think that it could use a little bit of texturizing and a little bit of ear candy. And then the other thing I'm going to say is you've got some really great resonant, a little bit too resonant at times, swelling pads. Another thing we still need an emoji for that we say all the time, and it's going to be the first time so far on this show, dynamic EQ. If you're new to the show, if you don't know what that is, dynamic EQ is this really fantastic form of EQ where almost like how a compressor is triggered, you can trigger it to just EQ it when it gets to be too much. So this is very useful in your situation when you don't necessarily want to do a volume reduction and you don't want to EQ the entire sound because there are moments when the resonance is fine. What you want is to use a dynamic EQ and set the trigger for that frequency that gets too resonant, and then every time it swells and it's like and it gets too much, it'll pull it back in for you, like having another pair of hands in the studio. So TDR Nova, we always shout that one a lot. One of these days I got to get whoever designed that in for like an interview, because that is like one of my top, I think, use all the time plugins. I will confess that since FabFilter Pro 3 came out, I do use that a lot too because that has a dynamic function. But TDR Nova is glorious and it's free 99. It's free, so get it. Is no harm. I mean, it takes up like 12 megabytes at the most. I'm just being generous. So I would just really apply some dynamic EQ to those pads so that they don't like create that ouch moment. And yeah, I would love to hear it privately with the vocals, but I still think that a little bit of texturizing would be good.
Yeah, I mean, I essentially agree with that. I think that it's depends on and now, like, you know, we got to hear the vocal, but as instrumental alone, it depends on what you're going for. I mean, I'm a fan of lo-fi, and there's a lot of like meanderiness in lo-fi with that. I mean, that's just lo-fi for its own sake. Like there is a lot of like stage setting because it's like in this case, this is all meant to be the background to something else. And in lo-fi or studying beats, like frequently it is all background on purpose because your mind and your imagination is the soloist in a way, because it's not really, it's like, that kind of music, it kind of just like fundamentally has a different function than many other musics. As far as dynamic EQing, yeah, I use. I'm glad there's a free thing because I just use FabFilter or Isotope, or if it's less broad strokes, like if I'm not exactly sure what part of the pad you were concerned about, but if it's not a high shelf or something that you're talking about, or like a normal EQ point, and it's more like piercing or dynamic, like I'm going to use dynamic in a different way, where the resonant peaks are more dynamic in the sense that they're like not always in the same place. I will use the unfortunately not free and very expensive Soothe 2, which for me as a professional is absolutely necessary, fundamental part of my toolbox, but I understand that it's like obnoxiously expensive. So keep that in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm answering this in the chat. Basically, Massel, the producer, was just like, I use parametric EQ and I automate each level by ear. Don't need a dynamic EQ. I think you're completely missing the point of what it is, okay? A dynamic EQ is not a tool to find the frequency for you that needs to be cut on a permanent basis. That's what you do with a regular EQ. A dynamic EQ is constantly changing in a way that your hand cannot do. Like, I don't care who you are, you cannot move a fader up around as fast. The only way that you could use a regular EQ like that would be to seriously go in every sample of the song and be like micro automating it. Oh, you were joking. Well, anyways, that was a good explanation for anyone who might not understand why not to just use a regular EQ. But thank you for that moment. So yeah, Natty, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, I think your artist name at least fits. This does feel like a beauty commercial.
Ooh. That's as close to a
maybe
burn.
with the vocals. I mean, I don't know whether it is a burn or not, though. Like, if you are exactly what you say on the tin, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
We don't know if they're actually trying to be skincare or not, or if it's a joke, though. No, I mean, I think if you're going to do that, like, lean in. Like, you should perform all your shows wearing one of those, like, Korean skincare face masks. Like so you have, like, that white, like, Michael Myers face and no one knows who you are. And then, like, periodically you can just, like, massage your own cheekbones and just be like, are you feeling the wetness? All right.
Wasn't Nivea one of the ones that did, like, an advert series where they were all wearing these, like, bodysuits?
I don't know.
Or was that Dove?
I think it was Dove. I think it was Dove. Yeah. All right. Anyways, hilarious. So we got clowns in Hollow Weird. I already know this is going to be weird. So, is there any weird comment to go with it, Natty?
Only that they want my opinion.
Oh.
Specifically, and
Well,
they say it's a bop.
Okay. Well, we're gonna let you come back with the feedback on that first. So if I forget to turn myself on, just start talking as soon as it ends, because this is all you.
I think I'm gonna be really mean here. I'm gonna be really cruel. This is an American TV show where they renovate restaurants, and it's two guys, and they have like checkered tops and the jeans.
Are they renovate a restaurant? I'm crying.
Are they really mean to the restaurateurs?
Yes. But then they come in and then they go all out, and it's like this is their in the middle of renovation, and they're going to work, and they've got their saws and their hammers and. I'm sorry. That's probably the meanest thing I could ever say.
I love it. I wish you would be more salty like this. You're hilarious. Anything else?
I mean, I can tell you why I feel that way.
Sure.
It's because every section just kind of happens. There's no lead in or build up of tension into each one. And then the loop comes back around. It's sort of like, okay, now I can see where we're looping. And then new instruments and elements get introduced. But again, it's just sort of bam, 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 bam. And you can kind of see where the TV, reality TV editor is sitting there chopping the video to coincide with the bam, 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 bam.
Well, wow. There you go.
That's exactly where my head is at with that one.
Well, I know you didn't ask for anyone else's opinion, but I'll let Lexi give hers because it would be a waste to have such a connoisseur of feedback not comment. I'll skip it because you clearly didn't want mine.
Oh my word. Yeah, I mean, a lot of things I say in my feedback is like it's going to be the same like seed concept. It's just because I think that a lot of the same tools are useful in so many different kinds of contexts. But I think being more specific about, I mean, the composition is the composition. I'm going to talk about the mixing because the composition is the composition. I mean, there's not much. You went for a thing. There's not that you're in your context, and there's not much I can say about like. I don't think I should change your context, but for the mixing, I think that I think you should get more specific about what's the most important element at every moment. That's the part that I said before. Because like you are like certain things are louder and certain things are whatever. I think you need to go further with it. I think it's just there are a lot of things. The lead guitar sound is very wide, but aside from that, like everything's kind of fighting for the same space all the time in my mind. So just get more specific. Like people think I know that producers commonly get to a point, and I think it's a really important line in everyone's mixing journey, where you think if you get the channel perfect, you set it and you move on. You know, you mixed that channel so great, it's you nailed it. It leads to a wooden mix because it's not responsive to the timeline, and so. So the supporting guitars should not always be the same volume because they have all these different sections of different contexts. You know what I'm saying? So be more specific from moment to moment on, pulling back the mids on everything except for the thing that's most important, or, balancing everything. Now, that opens up a can of worms of like, instability in the mix overall if every section sounds a different consistency from each other, and you just pay attention to that, and I mean you just continue to reference each section against each other and make it as consistent as possible overall, and the overall making it each section sound like the same song. You just pay attention to it. It is a danger, and you pay attention to it, and just being very diligent about what's highlighted at every moment and going further with that work. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, yeah, thanks again, clowns, for your subscription. Hopefully we delivered all your wildest dreams and expectations. And next up, I think it's our last cue skipper, and then we go back to the original cue.
No, we got one more.
Oh, we got one more. We are killing it. Thank you. Just so you know, if you haven't joined us before, if you have no idea what we're all about, we are the international live beat channel. We started out as a concept to throw live electronic performance events, competitions, and workshops. And in the process, we just built this awesome little community. And I discovered that I can't live without Nathaniel. So we're continuing our journey and continuing. And we love all of you so much. So thank you again. Next up, we got Glowty. What's up with Glowty, Natty?
Just a second. I've been skipping around the queue to get everything. All right. They said, whatever you are feeling.
Dun, 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 dun. All right, let's go. Wow. Well, that was awesome. And I'll let you guys in on a little secret. Sometimes even if you don't pay for the full track being played, if I really like it that much and I cannot bear to not hear what comes next super clearly, I will let it play like I just did with that. So why did I like that one so much? I mean, I think for me, texture is so important. Like I did go on a journey inside your mind. I feel like I heard, such nice stereo space. There was a really nice warm low end, and there was like some nice little bells that were giving me that crispiness. My really only feedback would be like, I like your different sections, but I think they could connect a little bit more. And it's sometimes like, I know what you were going for with the minimal dubby section, and both Lexi and I are both like in this world. Like this is very familiar stuff to us, but I would just take maybe even like a little bell sound or just a tiny piece or a few tiny pieces of the other section and just hint at it, like put it in as little details so that we still know that we're listening to the same song and it hasn't like completely flipped. So yeah, I'll let you continue.
No, that's exactly what I wanted to say the most. I have the impulse to like really dig in and tear this apart in a lot of ways, but the number one thing I wanted to say was the dubby the middle the dubby section, quote unquote dubby section. It feels like a different song, and so it's great, but it feels like a different song, and I think you need to take steps to either connect it to the other stuff or just rip it out and start another song with that as the main stuff. Either is fine, but it's just there's no if you're playing a game of Uno, there's no connector. Like it's not the suit, it's not the number, so it's like, what's the connection? And there's a million ways to do it, and then what ill-esha suggested would have been the top of my list as well. Is just like take some background element from the rest of the song, just so there's some sort of through line. There are plenty of other ways. I won't take time with it. We can talk after or whatever. But the rest of it, well, one little technical thing, this little impact at the end sounded really strange to me. Yeah, it's like it sounds like a TV edit where they splice the tape wrong, or like a reel to reel where they splice the tape wrong. Like the impact part of the impact was like before the cut or something, So I don't know. I usually don't say fix that. I usually say consider this, but this one I'm going to say just fix that. And there was some like. Again, like I said way earlier in the sessions, there's like some background things where the rhythm is strange to me. I'm going to just try to remember where, but maybe it was here. I know, but it was more like in and out of sections than about the... No, I guess it wasn't there, but just be really mindful of the rhythm of background stuff. Oh, it was here. So the one of the things sounds like really, really late compared to the others. Like it's like, not really gelling with the rest of the stuff. No, to me it's definitely the note. It's like the it's not fitting in the groove with the rest of the stuff there in my mind, but very notably. And then I think that, just like I said earlier, a bunch of times, I feel like there's like a focus problem, like what's supposed to take the attention, and like the aggressive thing will come in and that's the spotlight, but then it'll just stay loud when the bells come in and the bells are really loud. I hope it doesn't sound pedantic for me to keep bringing it up. I think it is a common thing that takes a song from sounding kind of amateurish to sounding more professional. I wanted to say, I think that you could pull back the transient of the hi-hat, like add attack to the hi-hat, because songs have like a hierarchy of transients, and that doesn't only apply to drums, it applies to the synths, like everything. They're just like you have a hierarchy of all the different axes. There's the things are louder or softer than each other, and things feel more forward and more distant, and things narrow or wide. This also applies. There are additional spectrums, and one is transients. And if everything is ticking your brain, if everything is ice picking your brain, there's no perspective anymore, just like with all the other axes. And the hi-hats are really loud, which is common and great, whatever, but that's not the loud. I mean, I would pull back the volume too, but it's not the volume that's the problem. It's in my mind, it's the attack, is the constant typewriter ticking of the hi-hats. I mean, I can just try to show you an example, but I think you know what I mean. Even if you don't agree, I think you know what I mean. Yeah, like those don't need to be feeling farther forward than the snare. And it's not really mostly a matter of volume. It's that the transient is so keeps shoving that needle in your eye. So just the easy answer.
Transient lobotomy.
Exactly. So easy answer. Just up the attack little by little on the hi-hat until it sounds better.
I would do a mic drop, but this is a really nice mic, so we're just going to symbolically. Natty, do you have anything to add to that extremely detailed feedback?
Maybe it's not hi-hats. Maybe you add shakers.
He didn't start it with, I mean. Oh, yeah, shakers. Yeah, different textures, or maybe even like varying the samples a little more as well. Like that'll give a really nice texture. But brilliant. You know, I like you when you monologue, Natty, but sometimes I like your like one-liners as well. It's like curated gems. So next up we have our new resident clown, Maisel, the producer, and I do literally appreciate it. I love jokesters. I feel like in my professional career up until a few years ago, I really took myself too seriously, and it wasn't until I started doing like skits and just, you know, doing all these fun things that I was like, this is fun. I'm supposed to like enjoy being an artist. So yeah, I really, really appreciate people who do not take themselves too seriously as well. Is there any specific feedback that Maisel would like, since we got the deluxe coming?
They asked if they should make more stuff that sounds like this and whether this sounds commercial.
So we're trying to be commercial here, I guess.
Trying to be commercial, and should they make more?
Okay. Well, this is, yeah, we've been having like week-long discussions about commercial versus, we are well-oiled for this challenge.
Searching for music for your next video? Then you need to check out Artlist.
Yeah. Well, Alexandra must have really hated this one because she just asked me when we end. I'm totally just. I'm totally messing with you. I think we may have different opinions on this, but I will go first as, the person with the mic and the power trip, and just kidding. The person who has been making commercial music for a long time. And my immediate response was no, and I was trying to figure out why it was a no, because I can tell that you do take a lot of care with your production. Like, you had some really good elements. The mixing seemed pretty smooth. Nothing was sticking out, and I think cheap samples, I'm gonna say. And this, maybe people will disagree with me, but what was making it sound less professional was that it sounded like some of the sounds sounded either like stock sounds or like just even like the guitar, like there was just something less professional about the actual sounds themselves to me. And it's, it sucks because like this is where this becomes an unfair game. Like if a person goes on Splice and they know how to pick the exact right loops, you can literally just throw 4 people's Splice loops together, and I swear I have some friends who built an entire licensing career from just taking full on, like shamelessly taking people's Splice stuff, not even editing them, and just throwing them in. So, you say you're poor. I get it. Up until quite recently, I mean, and it's still, I think being an artist sometimes is like functionally being poor, because as soon as you get money, you are investing it right back into something else. And then you're like, oh, what do I eat? Oops. So some
ramen for dinner again. Yeah.
Yeah. And Rag seems to be agreeing with me. He says your sound selection make this sound like an acid profile project. So here's the thing, like it becomes unfair as well, because people can not only do the Splice thing, they can buy like expensive contact libraries and blah, 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 blah. So couple things I would say. If you're poor, get really into sound design. Like it seems like you have your basic mixing theory like pretty good. Like nothing was hurting me, nothing was sticking out. Just go like deep into sound design. I taught sound design. I was a sound design professor for most of the last few years, and that alone, just spending the time constantly reading manuals and researching it and upgrading it, improved my own. Even though I've been sound designing for years, just really going in and concentrating on it leveled me up significantly. So I would really work on your sound design. And then also, like, if you can't afford a $9.99 a month Splice subscription, which is pretty cheap, but I get it, like maybe you can't, see if you have friends that play the instruments that you want, and like introduce, sometimes even just having one like really nicely recorded guitar over top of a bunch of lesser sounds can really like mask that. So those would be my 2 main suggestions, is like work on your sound design and try and find friends or free samples or like things that just sound really well recorded and really well timbred, so that it sounds more expensive. Because unfortunately it sounds like, your mixing sounds more expensive, but your sound selection sounds cheap.
Yeah, I'm inclined to let Natty go first, but before me, but
I'm curious to hear where you disagree, and then maybe I can tie break.
Sure. I agree with the overall assessment. I don't think it means you have to spend money, though, and I don't think it. There's a difference in samples that are just poor quality and samples that sound wooden, both of which could be described as like cheap samples. None of these really come off as like low bit rate or anything. So it's more about whether they feel alive or not. I think sometimes that comes from a variety of sample sources. I always encourage people to have organic things and synthetic things, and things that sound close and things that sound to have more room tone, and like don't have everything feel the same flatness and same dynamics and stuff. So that's kind of one thing. But as long as they're recorded well, and I feel like none of these sound just like shitty. I don't know. Can I swear?
No.
Can I swear? Yeah, okay. None of them sound like shitty.
Well,
They just sound kind of like boring, I guess, or samey.
It's true. It's the movement lag.
Yeah. So I think in this case, the cheapness can be overcome with more attention to motion. Is basically where I was going. And even where it doesn't sound cheap, I think that could benefit from this. And there are a few different ways to accomplish that. So I'm going to press the button here. Like there's motion with that like phaser noise, but it sounds like that's built into the sample. Like it's not, even that sound feels kind of wooden because it. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong. It feels kind of like just in the sample anyway. I'm just hopping around for examples. Yeah, those are the kinds of things I'm looking for. So that like the repeated thing could be. I mean, she said you could be filtering it. I think you should be filtering it. Yeah, like there should just always be some sort of subtle or less than subtle filter motion on that, like throughout the whole song.
And
always.
over like a longer period of time.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, because maybe you have like a filter on it and it's going like it's LFO filtering, but it's happening over and over again. So if you do a longer automation, that can also give people the sensation that it's moving, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But that it's not like you can apply that principle on all the different levels, and I think you should in this track. I think that's the main thing that's missing. It's just like subtle movement over time. Another different vantage point on that is, I mentioned earlier that you can sidechain for giving the drum space, where it's like the goal is to not notice the sidechain, and you can. And I also mentioned earlier you can do sidechain as a very like obvious special effect. I do think there's like a in the middle version of using sidechain, and when I mean sidechain, I mean essentially ducking from the drums. A third version, which is like not completely transparent and not annoyingly obvious, where the purpose of it is to further the groove, and I think you would benefit from that here, where it's just like a little bit more release than as fast as possible, where it's like gives a little bit of just life and pump that you would naturally hear. I mean, you would naturally hear that in real life. It's like the track is so like digital that it's it's like feels synthetic in a way, and with that kind of pumping, those are the kind of things your ear does with like the loud noise of a drum. It kind of like attenuates back when the drum is over, and it's also just it just breathes like that. So that's another angle of motion and non-digitalness that I think you could benefit from.
All right, Natty, tiebreaker. What do you think? Not that we're really disagreeing, actually, though. But what's
samples are not unsalvageable.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
What do I mean by that? Well, it's things like your marimba sound. I'm pretty sure it's a marimba. It's a vibraphone. I'm pretty sure it's a marimba. Though.
I think that's the biggest problem.
Marimba. Anyway, first automate the semitone value, like the really not just like not full notes, just really minor variations up and down, because people, when they're hitting the damn thing, are not hitting it in the same place every time, and it really only has a true note value at one point on the board, the note key thingy.
You mean like cents or full semitones? Because full semitones would like change the melody. Cents, right? Just wanting to clarify, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, cents. So in between your semitones, you got your cents. Manipulated by cents, not semitones. Anyway, the other thing you can do is.
I'm sorry, Natty. I had muted you, EQ. So sorry. Right, go back again.
That's fine. Oh well, now nobody can hear my screw up. Automate the sounds like marimbas by cents, not semitones, to get in between values. Because when they're hitting it, because like a wooden keyboardy type thing.
Oh, that's weird.
They're playing
James is saying they heard it, so I don't know if my mute's not working, but great. All right, move on.
Okay, everyone.
Weird.
I think they heard him.
Yeah, something's. I actually disconnected my mic, and I think I screwed.
Oh, now he's. That's not me, guys. That's not me. Now Natty's mic is.
Well, I can talk on that.
Okay.
While he's fixing, I can talk on that because that was. Oh, there he is.
That's why I keep going. You go.
I mean that was I was dancing around the elephant in the room, and I feel very very much in agreement that like since the marimba or whatever it is the star of the show, that's the thing that sounds the most wooden. And I think that it wasn't immediately on my mind to talk about the sense, but that's like the genius. I mean, that is the absolute answer. But the whatever ways you can give more life to that very like repeated digital sound. Yeah, absolutely. Some sort of like gentle LFO on the sense or anything. I don't know what device you use to do that, but we can tell you exactly what to do. If it's in Ableton Simpler or Sampler. I mean, you can do. In fact, you can do it in Simpler. You don't need a external LFO like Max for Live LFO. You can do it inside the Simpler. So.
Also, resampling. If it doesn't sound like it is out the plugin, freeze it and chuck it in one of those plugins like Simpler or Sampler.
Also, for any kind of like bell or things, like if for people who have a little bit of money, and Black Friday is coming up, so I'm going to just talk about plugins that cost money because who knows, they might go on sale. But physical modeling synths, if you happen to have Ableton, it comes, and you have the full version, it comes with them. Collision and Tension, they're both physical modeling, and they allow you to sort of, instead of using oscillators, to tune like real facets of an instrument, like what the body is made out of, what your mallet is made of that you're hitting this marimba with, how hard you're striking it. And because of that, it's actually going to produce very natural variations as if you were really playing it, because it's based on audio physics. So if you're not in Ableton, Applied Acoustics is the company that makes it, and they make one called Chromophone, which is basically the same thing. So yeah. Natty, did you have something else to add? I see you chatting and schmetting.
Yeah, I added a little bit in chat about automating your EQ as well as the sense, or just pairing them up. So you emphasize the bass and the treble response ever so slightly while you're changing the tuning, because it'll again bring out some of those resonances that are natural with bell sounds.
Absolutely. All right. Tell Montrell, I just want to give you a shout out because we were about to get to you like an hour ago, and then we got a deluge of cue jumpers. So I really hope you're still here. And I want to give you a full attention and a full spin because I know that you just suddenly had to wait a really long time. So I hope you're still with us.
They've got a comment too.
Oh, they have a comment. What's the comment?
I'm not super confident in the mix, so input there on that would be great. But mainly, I'm not sure the song stands as its own without vocals. Any other feedback is welcome. Thanks.
This will be a fun topic. We can talk a little bit about like how to make a song stand on its own without vocals, if I can still speak by the end of this. Shouts out to the Audius link. We always love those the best because they give us the most high fidelity audio, except when the server is overloaded and it takes 500 years to load like it's doing right now. There we go.
Hello. Very cool. I love this kind of music. Also, has nothing to do with feedback, but if you sped that up a ton, it would work at like happy hardcore raves, like so great. It would be like the best like hard style ever. Okay, so
Rocket League.
yeah, or Rocket League. Yeah, well, I mean, one of the other ones, the one that was explicitly video game music, I was trying to listen to that in context of Rocket League too, Rocket League as well. Yeah, I mean, I'll save that conversation for another time, but it's worth having. So I'm just gonna say what I keep saying over and over in a different way. There are sections where your drums sound relatively quieter and relatively louder, and it's not the drums, obviously they're the same all the way through. So I think you need to mix this with that. I mean, to take a pass mixing it with the drums muted, because all those different synth sections are out of balance with each other, basically, is where I'm going with this. There's that one, like, I don't know, I guess the main one, the soaring lead thing, where it's just way louder than the other stuff. So get all the main do everything I've been saying over and over with everyone else. Be very mindful of what's from bar to bar, beat to beat, moment to moment. Be very specific about what's the lead in that moment and adjust the other things accordingly. But then similarly from section to section, it's just, they don't match. They just don't match. So get them to match, because then you don't have to worry about your drum consistency. You don't have to worry, like the whole song across the whole thing will have integrity, and no one's going to be motivated to turn it up or down based on their comfort, because it's just going to be more consistent. So I can talk more on that, but that's the main thing. I mean, if we were doing a lesson, I would say go do that first and let me hear it again after, because then we can fix the other stuff in a more nuanced way, and attack the more details after I'm not being blown away and like getting whiplash on like which things are really loud and which things are not. Like, I'll just try to give you an example real quick. Yeah, I mean that lead is very, very loud. It's great. Sounds great. You're killing the vibe. It's just you gotta get them more.
I think killing the vibe means something else.
Well, oh. Well, no, you're like killing the game, but you're nailing the vibe.
There we go.
No, you're nailing the vibe. You're killing the vibe of the song, but you're not killing the vibe in the room. It's two different things. Well, it's like in the UK they'll say use mad differently than we do, or like
I'm just bugging you.
No, I love the differences, because like in US slang you say, oh, I'm not mad at it, like meaning like I'm not like, I like it, I'm not mad at it, that's cool. But then like it's the exact opposite in the UK, like I'm not mad about it is like I'm not crazy about it, I hate it. Yeah. So all right, anyway, I'm gonna just hop a little bit. And even within sections, this is not the perfect example, but it reminds me, there's a couple sections where the chords are already rhythmically alternating with the lead. Like it'll be like chord, lead, chord, lead, something like that. And the chords are still acting like the background. It is entirely appropriate if they're coinciding, but in that section they're not. And I would say then, rein in the lead in general, like I've said, but then maybe bring those chords up, because there's nothing filling that space, and it's a really nice call and response. It's a really nice interplay, like these kawaii future-y chords, like let them talk to each other. That at that point it's like a duet where I do have this spotlight, and then I shut up, and you have the spotlight, and then you shut up and I have the spotlight. It was already built to do that. So just overall, in all these various ways, get the synth sections to have even just volume consistency, as basic as just volume consistency. And then, I would take a look at it again after that.
Woo!
I
Well,
have a question for you.
how dare you?
Yes.
Reference tracks.
Yes.
Choose one song to recommend that you think captures a dynamic call and response it's just part of the song. You know, it's just something to say. This is a good example of it.
Well,
You can think about it.
yeah, I'd rather look at my list and come up with something like not in the moment. But I think a lot of things in this style, without like figuring out exactly the top most perfect one to suggest, a lot of things in this style are already doing that really well. I mean, it's already idiomatic to be doing that in this like, you know, kawaii sort of, you know, video gamey bubbly style. But I mean, like the first name that falls out of my head is Wave Racer. And of course, like anything Wave Racer. But I just
Definitely kawaii.
yeah, I mean, I can look at my list on my laptop and maybe come up with like the most perfect example. But I think things in this genre are generally already doing these things very well.
Amazing.
I'm going to recommend ones that are not in this style at all, but still a good example of the technique required. I mean, I've been replaying one of the old Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games, and their title themes always have this really dynamic call and response thing going on where they, you know, it's sort of pseudo-orchestral, but they're using old sound fonts and stuff because it was the Nintendo DS era, so, you know. They had to make do with very simple sounds, but still get that sort of sense of scale and scope. And yeah, Pokemon soundtracks, they're all pretty good.
Amazing. Somebody else who's been waiting very patiently is one of our regulars and, you know, favorites, Slack TV. Do you have one more thing to say? Go for it.
I didn't know if that was pertaining to this or moving on, but I have just one more thing to say. When you're getting that volume consistency, don't be afraid to make the sound more like each other. And what I mean by that is like all the sounds that you pick in something like this, or say like in American dubstep, where like, you know, it's like all these like a bunch of different sounds amalgamate into a melody. Don't be afraid, but you know, it's similar. It's people call it checkerboarding. You know, it's like the you switch what the thing is from section to section. Don't be afraid to have the conscious goal of making them sound more like each other, because they're never going to sound exactly like each other. They sound different by their nature. So if your goal is make them sound more like each other, functionally that just, the result of that is more consistency. So like if something has a big bump in, you know, at 3K and is kind of like low at, you know, 800, compared to the other synth, you know, nudge them EQ wise towards each other, and then you just the only thing you're gaining is consistency, even though the methodology in your brain is make them sound more like each other.
Ooh, yes, crushing it. I'm gonna have to like make 15,000 clips of just you for later, because it's such good advice. So shout out to everyone. And yeah, James Slack, we love you. At least I do. I'm just going to speak for everyone here. And is there any specific request from James? No?
Nope. Any and all feedback welcome, please.
All right. Well, I know this is going to crush it, so let's go. such beautiful. I gotta say, James, I think that your sense of melodic structure is really, really, really nice. Like, I like the tensions that you make. And it's super beautiful. There was a weird moment which I took note of. I'm gonna try and find it. I think it was like, whoops, wrong track. All right, go. Thank you, Audius, for just deciding that. Just a tiny bit, but if I feel like you've got like two different kind of chords over each other, and like one of them is like an A and one of them is like a G flat, and like we're very close together, so there's a little bit of dissonance where like you might want to look at the multiple melodies you have and just double check that they're not crossing, because it's just kind of really, it was weird. It was just in that one spot. So I think I would just take a look at that. And I know you're always like throwing out the whips. So post drop, I would say there's definitely a lot of mixing work to be done, but I've heard your other stuff that's more finished. So I'm going to just let Lexi comment on the here and now, because I know that you're capable. I think that when you just work on it some more.
Okay, sure. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I don't care because it's important. So one of the things in general, a lot of what I've said tonight is just pay more attention from section to section is what it comes down to. Is like, don't just set it and forget it on a given channel. And so one example of that, back to the transient thing, is right here in the mid. I mean, it's just one little moment, but a bunch of accentuating a bunch of moments is how we get to professional and exciting. So that's why I do this way. So good, I landed right on it. So this synth, which exists in the rest of the song, I think it is appropriate, or just like great mindset to say to yourself, in this section, it's going to be different. And the way I would suggest you to, because it's not fighting with other stuff. It is by default the highlighted thing. And so my suggestion that made me think about this is accentuate the transients on this plucky synth for this section, and then back off the transients when it's behind other stuff, and it'll just be exciting. It makes me think of other drum and bass tracks that do that. Like, have this be more pokey because it's just exciting and nothing fighting with it. It's got the room to be like you've earned it the room to be more attention grabbing because you composed it that way. And then anything else can, like, you can undo that work for when it's behind other stuff. So then I'm going to bring you to the head of the song, whatever. Oh, it's a little skippy on the mouse. That's why I haven't played it yet. No, it's okay. It's just the way these things are. I'm almost there. Slow. Go.
I think
Okay,
it's
got
my
it.
dog.
Okay. And what I'm about to say again is just, make sure things aren't fighting with each other and highlight the right things. So let's get there. I didn't realize it took so long. Sorry. Oh, did I miss the whole drop? Okay, so the way you've composed it is, and I can't. The reason why this is necessary advice is I can't even tell what you're trying to have be the lead right here. You have ba 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 ba, and then it just goes ba ba ba, like on that pattern. Ba 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 ba. And then the thing above it is. Yeah. Okay. So you have the arpeggio thing. So at various points along this, drop journey, they're kind of like on the same plane. Again, this is what I've been saying over and over. My suggestion is the thing that's moving. I mean, the da 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 da. Have that be framed with EQ, with volume, as the lead thing, and once it starts repeating, then bring up the arpeggio. But so it's highlight the thing while it's happening, mellow out the arpeggio while the first thing's happening, and have them switch with gentle automation in the EQ, gentle volume automation. And I think just the reason why I keep hammering on this is I think most people are just used to that being a bridge too far. Like, I think that most people are used to that being like, oh, but I really don't need to go to all that trouble, right? You do. You totally do. To meet the targets for your song to fit with the things you want it to fit with. That is not too far. That is not overthinking it. It is necessary. Even if you're not constantly, automating everything, that level of thinking is absolutely necessary to get it where you want it to go. And I think it's very necessary here in this moment. So, yeah.
Natty, anything to add on that one? What'd you think?
I mean, I enjoyed the atmosphere. I'm not so keen on those vocal samples in this context.
I think
I feel
maybe
like
there's
they're
just
sort
a
of
lot going
superfluous.
on too. I think maybe if there were like more room for them, maybe you would like them more. But I think like what Lexi said
Yeah.
about there just being like so many parts and not really spaced out means that like you can't even handle that extra. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Sonically.
That lines up with my feeling as well. So,
Yeah. Well.
but otherwise, and I like your bass sound design.
Mm-hmm. Poor
Okay,
Natty,
it's
by
nice
the
and
way,
chill.
shouts out. Natty's been super sick for a week. This is like almost the first time I've talked to him. Like I was actually starting to get concerned because I don't think I've gone more than like 2 days without talking to Natty in like 6 years. So I was just like,
And then I just dropped off the face of the
I
earth.
was like, is
for a
he
week.
okay? So like you must have been really not feeling well. So I'm really glad that you are here with us today, and thank you. We have FF4C. What's the dealio?
How is the groove? I think the sub might be too loud, but I'm not sure. Just general vibes and what stands out in the mix. Song is a work in progress, needs a different intro and some transition fixes.
All right, noted. Let's go.
Hold me close, don't let me go. I'm purple like let's take it slow. If we don't take a chance, we'll never know. So hold me close, don't let me go.
dear, my dear. The question, is the sub too loud, is like my panic button, because I have to deal with this question for like the last 20 versions of the mix. Like I get to version 7, I'm like, I'm almost good. And then I have to do like 20 more of just the sub and the kick. And so it's always difficult to tell, but here is what I suspect, because this is a problem I run into a lot with newer students and stuff. The low end of a sub is not very audible on a lot of monitors. So even if you hear a sound in a big track where you think it's just a deep sub and nothing else, there's a lot of illusions going on in there. There actually is probably distortion of some kind or some sort of thickening applied to the middle part of the bass and the upper part, so that even if you're listening on an iPhone, you can hear the sub. And so when you hear like a really big trap song with an 808 and somebody's listening on their phone and you're like, why do I hear this banging sub even though there's like clearly no sub? It's because they've done a little bit of trickery to emphasize what I call the outline of the bass, right? The top end, and your imagination will fill it in. Like that's the amazing thing about the human ear. So what's happening right now in my studio, which is treated, which has actually SonarWorks applied as well. So like I know what it's supposed to sound like, is like I can tell that you've probably been adjusting that sub up and down going, God, it's either too loud or I can't hear it. And I think what you need to do instead is sculpt the really low end carefully, because there's also a lot of low end stuff that could be even getting in the way of the rest of your mix. And then focus on the upper and the mids and start to process them so that we can hear like that. And the best test is to listen on crappy speakers, listen on your iPhone, right? Just because to me, I almost was like, where's the bass? Like the whole track, I was like, I don't hear any sub at all. And then if I listened really close, I could sort of feel the bottom end underneath me, but nothing was hitting me in the chest, in the stomach. Like there's so many parts of the body that you really feel it in. And I think the lowest sub, when you barely hear it, it's almost like below your ass, right? So you almost like, it doesn't make you move. What makes you move is like the next part. And then you get like hit in the stomach or punched in the chest or all these other feelings that you get from bass as the frequency moves up. So the tip for that, like I really like to separate my bass so that I can put effects on the different part of it without affecting it. Because like you'll hear a tip that says never put reverb on the sub. 100%. But if you really want a reverby bass and you separate the top end out, you can get away with putting a little reverb on the top and then it sounds like a reverby bass, but there's no reverb on the bottom. So my personal approach to that is to use in Ableton, I make my own rack and I use a frequency separation plugin that is designed to not have phase problems, and it basically separates the low, the mid, and the high. So I have 3 separated channels on the same bass, and then I can put distortion on the mids or maybe like a little bit of bit crushing on the highs and just be subtle about it. But in that way, the imagination of the person listening on the iPhone will fill in the rest of the part that I want them to hear. So this is an interesting topic because I'd love to know actually, illexxandra, what you do for this kind of situation.
Yeah, similar. I mean, it's already just with the question, we get confused because people use all these terms interchangeably. You know, to say the bass or to say the sub. People are depending on people's skill level or whatever, they're trying to convey something different. Like, do you mean the frequencies between 30 hertz and 65 hertz, which is the sub, you know, which is the actual sub, or do you just mean the feeling of low end, or do you mean, you know, there's all these different things. So when it comes to the actual, is the sub level appropriate? Really, which I can see now. I can use both cameras. Hi, is the sub level appropriate? And you don't have proper monitoring. There are plenty of tricks and tips. I was trying to say both of those words at the same time. That you're forced to hang on to because you just don't have the monitoring to figure it out. And I will tell you, if you want to know, that I think if you have a well mixed track. And you're hitting, I mean, all of this is genre dependent. Frequently in electronic music, bass music, dance, you know, music, or just, you know, modern music in those molds, people are, you know, if you're kind of in the like, you know, -7 LUFS plus or minus, you know, or, you know, -7 or -6 or whatever. In that zone, I tend to aim for -7 myself, but, and it's generally well mixed. There's so many details. I mean, I'm skipping over so many things. But if you're in that zone and you have a consistent sub on a regular spectrometer around -6, that's what I aim for. Now that is skipping over so many details, and like you can have a visual sub level that doesn't have the proper impact because there's phase problems just with not even phase conflicts, but like the phase on that sub is rotated strange or whatever. All I'm saying is there are many like basic, intermediate, and advanced footnotes and asterisks that I'm skipping over. But if you have something around -7, -6 lefts, and you have a constant sub at absolute -6, I feel like that is safe. I think it's safe enough to stop worrying about it and then do some minor adjustments when you're right at the end stages. As far as sub perception, like you can have a very, very strong, appropriately strong sub, and then on many, if not most, consumer playback environments, the person's not going to hear it at all, and that's sorry, you can get back in here. And that's bad. Then that takes us to what ill-esha was talking about of making it perceived low end. And then just to explain what she said, another way of imagining it, if you have a tone, say you have because like really the strongest sub is a sine. The strongest sub is a sine. You can get some like rubbing and wobbling from other ways, from sine waves interacting with each other or squaring it off a little bit. But if you're doing anything to a sine wave, it's not the sub you're gaining the perception of the sub. Because if you're doing anything to a sine wave, functionally you're adding saturation. That just is what it is. And so you can add the saturation by changing the wave shape. You can change the saturation by actually adding saturation. And so the saturation in many different ways, many different kinds of saturation. Saturation is adding partials, is adding harmonics to the fundamental wave, the fundamental sine, for lack of a more specific way to describe it. And if you add all those partials and take away the sub, the actual fundamental tone, your brain is filling in that tone because all of those partials are pointing to the thing that made it. And your brain is used to doing that. So it's expecting that whether it's hearing it or not. And that's how you get like the sub perception without the sub itself.
Woo, Natty.
I mean, I don't really have anything that's worth.
I know.
That's
Alexandra's
very
killing
extensive.
it.
Can I say a little bit more then?
Yeah.
Because we're talking about so far we've all just been talking about the question that the writer had, but actually we didn't really talk about the song itself. There's a lot going on. I think the drums are mixed really loud, and you could functionally have like a snare on every beat. And I mean, I'd be glad to help you try to figure out how to make that happen, but I don't know if you should try to make that happen. I mean, if you're really dedicated to that, but it's like on every beat on like a track that seems like it's trying to be vibey. And so like the drums are really like dominating and stepping on everything else. And I think that should be your first stop on what to do with this next.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, that definitely. I think that's as well. So, but I do like the idea, and I think that like it was a really original take, even though you're doing like it's a style of music I've heard. There was something unique about it that I thought was really stand out. So I think that you've got really cool ideas, and yeah, fixing the drums, fixing the sub, which are the backbone. That's the thing, and I'm the same way. I can mix perfectly the first try, pretty much all the atmospherics, and then it's just the sub and the drums, the sub and the drums, the sub and the drums. So it can be hard.
Sure, but I mean, even just needle dropping, you'll hear it. It's right there. Ba-doom, ba-doom, ba-doom. Press the button. Does it not do that? Okay, good. Check. It's just a lot. It's like it's just a lot on the attention, and it doesn't. You have all these cool atmospherics that I feel like are supposed to be what we're paying attention to, and they're just like stepped on. There's other ways to solve that rather than taking out drums, but I feel like that's a good place to start.
Definitely. Next up, shouts out to Moldy Soul, always a great supporter of us. What was the deal with this one, Natty?
Production-wise, does it sound like a sound should sound?
All right.
Also, compositionally, I think it's too long. Any ideas for adaptation or any thoughts on structure?
All right. When does a sound not a sound? When it sounds to the sound of silence.
Notice me, senpai. Notice me.
All right, so I'm gonna. It's hard for me to you know, like, I really respect you as a producer, like, a lot. I think that technically this is like, I can't say much about it, but we've been talking. Lexi and I have been hanging out for like a week, so we've had a lot of like gems of conversations. And one of the things she said that made me laugh was a friend of hers refers to this style sometimes as preset switching. And it, you know, it's like this very like glitch hoppy, like, here's a sound, 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 here's a sound. So I think that I'm not saying I have a problem with sound shading. I mean, I love glitch hop, and I was like one of the first people on board with it. But I think that there are ways that you can blend it together that will make it less robotic and less preset switchy. Like, for one, I think just in general, all those sounds, they sound too different. And like my ear is like one sound, this sound, this sound, this sound. And the other thing is that they are switching on very gridded intervals. So one thing you can do right off the bat is to just be like, I'm not going to switch in very robotic intervals every time time, because if I don't change it up, then my sentence will get boring, right? So I think that you can like play around with how you transition, even in the middle of a note, if you blend it well enough. And that's the other thing, is blending them better. And I don't even think I have to tell you how to do this, but I think that something I've done sometimes when the sounds are really, really different is to do it with slight pitch bends. Like sometimes having the note just go and the next one go. It almost gives you that tiny, like the feeling that you don't even notice. Yeah, I get it. Like it's hocketing. I talk about this like every week, or what like Lexi said, checkerboarding, like the same tone. But it has to still be smooth. It can be broken AF, but it has to also flow. And right now I'm too distracted by the robotic changing of your sounds. So I think that I would just like I love the breakdowns. I think like the breakdown was the most like emotional and accessible and like really cool part for me. And I wanted to hear more of like the abstract vibe of that instead of just like sound.
Yeah. You described that thing perfectly. I, for some reason, this song didn't bother me so bad with that, but I do agree with what you're saying. Like the repetitiveness of the switching, and like, there's, we talk about syncopation in terms of the actual melodic figure, and you have some syncopation in there, but there's, all these apply. Everything you can think of applies to macro and micro and everything. So you can think of the regularness of switching the say you had the exact same melody every time, but you changing on which note it switches from one thing to the other, or from one from one synth to the other, or like syncopation is also in terms of harmonic rhythm. Harmonic rhythm is just like the rhythm at which the chords change. And with like it's just like a lesser discussed thing. And like when the harmonic rhythm is really straight instead of like anticipating and pushing and pulling, like that can get really like plotting as well. It sort of applies here. I'm just giving examples. What I was thinking about most of the time was your question about pace and length, and everything Alicia said is really important. But I my brain was kind of zeroing in on the pace of it. I guess it's one and the same, because the how quickly you get used to the repetitiveness also speaks to the pace and the form.
It's too predictable.
Yeah, it's too predictable. I usually pull out this singer at a specific moment, but I'm just going to pull it out because you should all hear it anyway. There's a concept just in general in art, but especially in improv and improvisation and jazz improvisation, where you want to there's some magic. There's some magic percentage that you can decide on yourself, depending on you as an artist and what genre you're doing. But there's some magic, fraction of how often you're fulfilling someone's expectations and how much you are defying people's expectations. And if you're satisfying people's expectations too often, it's boring. And if you're defying people's expectations too often, it's chaotic, and there's nothing to hold on to, and there's no expectation to satisfy in the first place. So, you can imagine a percentage like 60-40 or 70-30 or whatever, but it's got to be more. It's got to be more than half of the time that you're satisfying it, or it just generally feels too chaotic. And then if you're defying expectations too little, it's boring. So, just generally think about that. I think about it every time I give feedback and every time I write a song myself. So, it applies very well to electronic music phrasing, because generally you're like saying something, you're saying a variation of it, you're saying the thing again, and then for the turnaround, it's something totally different. So, it fits in this milieu very well. So just keep that in mind for that. In terms of the overall structure, I was gonna say look to Monster Cat. I have a hard time saying I don't want to speak against anyone that people work with, but I have a hard time saying personally that I'm like a huge Monster Cat fan. But I listen to Monster Cat a lot because Monster Cat has a partnership with Rocket League, which we've established that I play too much. And so like I've listened to Monster Cat a lot, and And some of the songs I like very much, of course. And I mean, to my underground rebellious self, so a lot of the songs are kind of like too poppy for my taste, but I think they are all of them uniformly are amazing with pace. They're amazing with being awesome the right amount, being efficient the right amount. The breakdowns in particular is why I'm bringing this up. I think they do an amazing job of not losing the excitement and momentum in the breakdowns. And I think your breakdown here, I agree with Leisha that it's great, atmospherics and really cool, but I think it's too long, and I think it like pulls back way too much at first. There's no reason that like there's like this like subtle melody in here. There's no reason you can't just like jump right into that and lead with that, because it's already pulling back a lot. Yeah, there's like these chords happening and doodle-doodle-doodle. Like you could start out with you could like really from the gate have a subtle version of that in the background, because it really just pulls back a lot. I mean, it's like it doesn't relieve it like you're trying to relieve the tension, but it just like drops the ball instead of relieving the tension. It just like lets go. Maybe that's too harsh of a way to put it, but that's how it feels to me.
Well, funny you should say that, illexxandra, because something I can say about Monster Cat having released with them is that they are the most OCD label I have ever met on arrangement. Specifically. And I've never had this experience really before. Like most of the time when I put out labels, like we might do some mix revisions, or they might say it needs to be shorter or something. But Monster Cat literally came back to us with our release being like, this verse needs to be cut in half. This breakdown needs to be 4 bars longer. This drop needs to be like this, which, makes somebody like me who doesn't like to listen to other people tell me how to write songs very angry. So I was very angry, especially because a lot of the cuts involved cutting like half of my lyrics. And as a songwriter, I'm just like, but I didn't finish saying what I wanted to say. But, in the end, they were right. And, right is also subjective. But like illexxandra said, they have such a signature that it's really like housekeeping for them to make sure that their releases all have that same quality. So it's interesting that you notice it. It's really cool, because I will confess, like I'm not like a listener of their if I played Rocket League, I'm sure I would just be listening to them in the background. So I don't really know. I was just like, were they just being hard on me? But you telling me that makes me think like, I think that they're just very meticulous about that. And, and it actually really taught me as well to question myself and go, does it need to be this long, or am I just like stroking my own ego at this point? So
I think they're I mean, it's everybody has their own artistic goals, but I think they're masters of pace. And even if you listen to them and decide to go a different way, I think it's very useful to use them as a model for pace.
Amazing. Well, speaking of pace, we've definitely given very extensive feedback tonight. How many do we have left, Natty? I just want to make sure that we may go slightly over. We try to listen to every single
Sunny
track.
Skies.
Yep.
Depth Strider.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 2.
We can cut Regs because he was asking the whole time for us to cut him. We'll play him next week. So 2, 3, 4, 5.
Donna.
All right.
Grapevine, aka Frequency Response, and Kyria Flurry.
All right, we gotta go a little
So that's
faster,
5.
or we'll be here for years. No, you're just too good, Lexi. It's just too good. So yeah, Natty was smart enough to close the queue a little bit sooner. Otherwise, we'd be like an hour behind. But it's all good. So what is up with our dear Sunny Skies? This is gonna be interesting because Sunny Skies, I know, has been learning the style of glitch hop. So actually, the track that you just heard was like a textbook classic, like Moldy Soul. Moldy Soul loves to just be mysterious, but I'll tell you something about Moldy Soul. Moldy Soul was like an active glitch hop festival artist. That's back in the day when we used to know each other. And so, you kind of just got an instruction manual. Like there are so many things about that style, all the stuff we were feeding back on is picking, but I mean, he definitely has the vibe of it right. And he definitely knows. So I'm interested to see, was there specific requests, Natty?
I was told a few things about the song when we last gave it a listen. I chose to focus on a few though. I wanted to record my own vocals once and took some suggestions to turn myself into a choir. I plan to add more harmonies, but for now this is the base idea. I stripped some elements drop. I plan to add some more complex ones. I'm glad it sounds cleaner than it was. I also changed the chords up. He'd like to make the second drop more different from the first. And he'd like some help with ideas for that. And he'd like to introduce vocal chops.
Yes.
So, how can I sound better vocally, and how can I pull off the things I want to do?
Sounds good. How can I sound better vocally? How can I pull up the things I want to do? All right.
Once again, I'm here, all alone, on my own. Now I stand here at last. I'm here, not alone. You right here by my side, safe from last, safe from the past. Now my dear, take from here. I'm here, will never be alone.
Okay. So much. First of all, I gotta say kudos, huge kudos to you for doing this style, for trying it, for learning it. This is one of the hardest styles to make and to mix because it requires so many micro edits and so much cleaning up. I think that the piano part and your vocals are actually some of the strongest parts of the track. They're really lovely, and I like what you're doing with your vocals too. I'm still having a tough time with the beat, and the beat is like so much of like good glitch hop. Like it's very robotic, and when I hear glitch hop that I don't like, it's usually because of this reason, because a lot of the stuff that I said about the previous song, the Moldy Soul song, is kind of the same here. Like there's a roboticness to the switching up, and I want more of a groove. So I would really play around with groove. Like something that has helped me that is actually not related to EDM whatsoever is listening to a ton of world music. I got into like Afrobeat and flamenco, and like I just listen to as much cultural music as I can to get inspired to play with different kinds of rhythms, because especially in the Western world, especially in the pop listening world, like we are basically being like dumbed down over the years because people, I actually read a bunch of articles about how like if you analyze the timbral variations between like the hit songs of the 70s, it was like 10 times greater than now. Like now pretty much all the pop songs sound almost the same, like just with the instruments they use and the palettes. And so, I would really just go a little left field and like don't just try and make what you think is a glitch hop sound, but play with swing. And I'm not saying you have to put African percussion in there, not at all. I'm just talking about rhythmic syncopation and playing with different changes, because there's a lot of mixed stuff and I'm just going to let Lexi go on that. But for me, the biggest thing is the groove.
Yeah, I'm certainly, I think, I'm not even going to put my opinion in it. Drums are, the drum choice and the drum swing and the drum like vibe, I think defines a genre more than anything else. So you could have the exact same beat pattern with like different drum sound choices, and it'll read different, and like I like what I was hearing. It doesn't scream the genre glitch hop to me, and I think that's okay. Like, it's a moment in time that's kind of old, frankly. So while I still respond very strongly to it, I'm kind of like a holdout, and like I don't know if you really need to be so dedicated to nailing it.
In general.
Yeah.
Let your
yeah. In general. Yeah. Do things that are outside the box. I say this is kind of like another one of my tropes, but once people are trying to make a genre, I lose interest, and it's not because I'm like flighty or whatever. It's just I think that once you're recreating instead of creating, you stop creating. You know what I mean?
Whoa.
And frequently my favorite music is when genres are first developing or transitioning from one genre to another. Like my favorite, I don't know, this is kind of like an old example, but I used to say it a lot. My favorite dubstep was like when people were first branching out from classic UK dubstep, like when like before it became full on rage face bro step, there's like a little window in there where people were experimenting, like, oh, I can be more aggressive, oh, I can like use a robot voice, like, different things. And once that got so popular that people were like, oh, this is the thing, let's all keep making this until everyone has a nosebleed. Then I checked out. Then I'm like not interested anymore, and that applies to pretty much everything in my world. So don't try to make a genre. Do the things that are incongruous. Do the things that are not the popular thing.
Hell yeah. Natty, you look very confused. Are you all right?
I'm just thinking about whether, you want advice on the vocal performance, but I think it's kind of hard to give feedback on it because the vocal is so drowned out by everything else.
Yeah. I think it could be a little almost like you could push yourself more, like emotionally, because right now it has this very like pleasant, like I'm singing about something, and no matter what it is, I just sound like it's like a lovely tone. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but I want to hear you like be emotional in some way about something. I feel like right now maybe Natty's right. Maybe it's not like coming through because it's being drowned out, but I definitely felt it was a little flat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have just one quick technical thing to say about it. That when you dub yourself, like when you multi-track yourself, one of the like sort of, it's not secret or hidden, but one of the like important, more obscure, higher level things about mixing vocals is timing the overdubs, like timing the multi-tracks. Like they really, to meet like the current standard, you really got to be like cutting the second track, the second voice, the second vocal track. You need to be, most of the time you need to be cutting it up a lot to get the timing much closer to the lead channel of it.
Wicked. All right, Depth Strider. We're gonna keep moving. We're gonna keep it tight. I hope you're still here, Death Strider. I really respect you for being here. I'm just gonna assume that you are here. And any comment, Natty? Sorry.
Effect balancing, such as too much fuzz on a certain instrument or something to that extent. Otherwise, general feedback is appreciated. Thanks.
Natty's on 1.5 speed now. Okay, let's go. All right, there's another rule that we have on this show. If I do not feel like it is going anywhere in enough time, I will talk sooner. So, rain noise I think is beautiful. I think your noise level and your noise balance is actually quite lovely. But I gotta say, and I like piano. I'm a piano player. This would be like the good background for me to talk to you over like a YouTube video about like dealing with the winter weather in Denmark or something. But by the time like two minutes comes around, like I actually was about to talk and then I stopped because I was waiting for something to happen, and a little something started happening, and it was nice, but that little thing should have happened sooner, and then something else should have happened. So I'm just I just think overall you need, it's not that you can't make ambient music, right? It's not that you need a drop. It's not that you need any of these things. It's that you need to create some sort of textural variety. So, really good ambient music has a lot of subtle movements and textures and elements that they don't take your attention, but they keep you realizing that something is evolving. So,
my first comment was similar and similar to something that ill-esha said several songs ago, is that it all feels backgroundy, and you might say that's what it's for. There's another point where I wish we had references, because I feel like you'd find that even in lo-fi beats or studying beats, that not everything feels on the same plane and all far away. Like frequently, for example, like the drums on this. Let me get back to where there are some drums. Well, I mean, there's drums throughout. I mean, that counts. So, like frequently in my experience, at least in the lo-fi and studying stuff that I like, and vaporwave stuff that I like, the drums may be filtered down. I mean, I think this is way too backgroundy, but the drums may be filtered down or a bit reduced, or just like old sounding drums or vinyl recorded old sounding drums where it's not as full frequency and in your face, but they'll still be loud in the mix, like a bit crushed lo-fi drum kit. It's not necessarily going to be quiet in the mix. It just has the vibe of subtleness. It has the vibe of lo-fi-ness or whatever, but it's not necessarily just like ratcheted way down on the gain. It could be quite loud at times. So just give us more dimension.
One might say, be a bit more of a depth strider. Your name is literally Depth Strider, so stride that depth, baby. Get deep. Natty, I'm so sorry to leave you on that note. What would you like to say?
I mean, well, add a little bit more bass if you're going to be deep.
It's true.
It may be lo-fi, but that's a sampling technique. It doesn't mean it defines the entire frequency spectrum of your track.
Then the thing about this is, like, you know how Lexi just clicked back to show you something? It's like you almost can't even tell that she did that. Yeah, like I could just keep, like, if it wasn't for like the slight pause, it's kind of just like the whole way through. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think. Lovely though. Lovely start, lovely texture, lovely vibe, like everything, you know. And when we say this, it's just like we want it to pull us in more. You know, we don't want to get bored of hearing it. Even it, and it's so tricky, right? It's like, how do you make something chill but not backgroundy? How do you make it like exciting but not in your face? And
luckily, there are many examples of good ones out there, or we wouldn't care about the genre. So reference.
Donna, Cardona, what's up with them?
Still don't have a verse or pre-chorus production. Waiting to find vocals so I can tailor it around that. Wondering what y'all think of it.
Okay, so there's no vocals, but there's going to be vocals. All right. Wow.
Yes.
First of all, I'm gonna say, just looking at this waveform, it looks like you need a little bit of a limiter. So I might have to ride the volume on this one, but you know, be careful what you send out, because sometimes and that was one thing I forgot to say to Sunny Skies, like the sharp highs of the pads. Oof. Sometimes that just happens from limiting, but not limiting, it makes it hard to listen to as well. So let's check out M. Cardona, hoping that this volume level doesn't mess with us too much, but let's see. Verse, chorus, verse, structure, got it. Yeah, this one is super hard without having the vocals to kind of like kind of like know what you're going for here, but my first initial impression is the piano. I hate this advice because it's just like it's hard advice to fix without money, but you need a better piano. Like the piano, it's got that very canned, cheap. And this kind of piano, like the only time it really works is in old house music songs, like vintage rave ones where it's like it's supposed to sound like you had a sampler with only one note in it. But I don't know if it maybe even just like, I think I'm going to assume that you're programming this piano. If there's any way you can play it, that would improve it way more, like even just a chord, because sometimes just the looseness, the fact that the velocities will be uneven and the timing is a little off will make your piano sound better. So for me, that's like the biggest issue is I'm just like, this piano is driving me. It's just so static. I mean, you could also like turn it into more of a artsy synthy thing and you could filter it. But yeah, the piano is killing me. And I'm going to let Lexi talk about it, but she said it was too clean and I kind of agree with that too.
I'm happy to be bad cop on this one. So I think this has I could describe a similar problem with this as the last one. Everything in the last one felt distant, but on the same plane. Everything on this one seems like very crisp and digital and like plain Janey, but all like very up front. Like it's all on the same level, but like not far away, but like up front. And so there are a lot of ways to do that. I think the piano thing is a big issue, but I think even in rave and like classic house, the piano is more plastic. Like this is just generic piano. Like in rave, it's like a piano sampler being played over and over, and it's like notably ravey. It's like notably flat. Like it's like on purpose flat. And this is like like suburban. I don't know. It's just it's a hard no on the piano. But luckily, there are great and free ways to fix it. There are lots of nice free nuanced pianos out there. A couple different things, both in like the Spitfire orbit is Spitfire's Labs, which is a free. It's a plug-in. I was going to say sampler, but they have a bunch of free patches in some of their pianos. Similarly, in that orbit, there's a thing called Piano Book, which has way more than just pianos, but started out as people sampling their own pianos. So that's Piano Book. I think it's pianobook.co.uk, and they will most of them play in a free sampler that you can download from there. That's not their sampler, but it's made for it. And there's a million pianos, and they're all different vibes and styles, and you don't have to settle for like generic whatever, stock piano that. So that's that. That's really easy to fix. And then some subtle filtering, and then getting distance and having not everything be up front, and then you'll be a lot of the way down the road.
Natty, I feel like this style is kind of like almost more in your wheelhouse. Like, did you have any thoughts on it?
I mean, it just right now it doesn't have enough tension is the problem. We're going off into zines territory. Where, you could just see this being some sort of advert for something. And I don't think it's necessarily a case of, a vocal structure around it. A vocal, like even just, say you hire a vocalist for it, theoretically, they need something emotional to get their teeth into.
Yeah, I would have a really hard time writing to this, for sure.
So maybe you need to just imagine the sort of thing you want to say, and then try and gear the vibe to match what you're trying, like what message you'd say. So that's kind of where I'm feeling at with this one. Try and add some tension, because right now it lacks that. Yeah,
Natty, I love you so much, because you always think of these things that are like such big deals that I just somehow get lost in, and if anyone, like one of these days, I'm going to send you all like a screenshot or a picture of my screams, because while you all are just kicking back, I'm like operating OBS, running loopback, changing the titles, running the Volta, loading up the next submission, chatting with Natty on the backside, monitoring my Stream Deck, monitoring 2 cameras, dealing with SonarWorks and the Twitch chat. So I do think that that's a big reason why sometimes I miss these really important things. And I'm really, really, really lucky to have Nathaniel to just notice them for me. So you're the best. That's all I'm trying to say.
Love you too.
Love you. Love. And illexxandra is just, can we just have a moment of love, because she's amazing. She's so amazing. And we love her. And everybody's like, she needs to be here all the time. We got 2 more left. One of them is from Frequency Response. So thank you for patiently waiting. What's up with them?
2 more.
Anything you might have.
All right. Anything is great.
Incredibly vague, but okay.
like this idea, but it's really sharp, so I've actually been listening to it more quietly than I wanted to, even though I liked it. Like, usually I would turn something like this up, but it was really, really hurting my ears, so I actually couldn't do that. So my dear frequency response, you need to edit your frequency response. You need a little bit more warmth. Like the high problem sounds very digital, and sometimes it can actually even just be from like crunching your limiter down really hard and having it bring up those highs. So sometimes you need to do two things: back off the limiter a little bit, and also go back in your mix and just evenly take away the highs across the board, so that you don't have this big wall of highs that gets pushed up afterwards. Yeah, and I know you had a lot of things to say too.
Oh no, not necessarily a lot, but some. All right, allons-y. Right here is the intro. I can't get it to do the thing. The intro, it's like so filtered down, and then when it comes in, like the contrast of the brightness is the shock. Like, it's bright. I think it's too bright overall, but it's especially jarring. Like, I think it's really important for intros to set up. I skipped saying this on a lot of other songs, but this applies to a lot of the rest of you. I think it's really important for the intro to hint at the sonic frame of the song. So sometimes you'll go from the intro to, and then like the drop synth or like the main synth is just like so vibrant, even if it's great. It's just like hitting all these like aspects that you weren't used to, and you're like, is this the same song? You know what I mean? Like, I think you at least have to like throw some blips of full frequency of the main thing or here and there or something, just so people know what the boundaries of this box are before it's like and then the other main thing I wanted to say was just the main synth is relentless when the vocal comes in. So it's just the vocals. I think the vocals buried the whole time, and it's because, again, like I've said all these other times, the main synth it's not like dynamic over time. So the main synth appropriately has the spotlight, and then it just never backs off when the actual soloist comes in.
True. Natty, what do you think?
I mean, your bass definitely needs to overall end up grittier, a little bit more cut off, and resonance changes to it, sort of. And also maybe just add in a second layer to your bass to give it more sub, because right now it's sort of lacking in that department.
Yeah. Okay. Good. We
want,
all
like, a
heard it.
vibe.
And one of the nice things about this feedback thing is that like we all have different ears. So if we're all hearing something, then it probably is true. Otherwise, you could argue with us. But Natty.
No, you're not allowed to.
I hope you feel better. I can tell you're still on the mend because usually your energy level is like 10 times up.
Yeah, I'm crashing pretty harder than I expected.
You're still adorable, and I love you so much. And we have one last. We're gonna play it, even though Rags had to go, because I just have to give a proper shout to Rags. Rags has been a supporter from the beginning, up until Stasis Stigma knocked him off. He was the highest all-time donator because he always throws things. So when he said, "Delete me from the queue, I'm leaving," I was like, "Don't you dare! You deserve feedback more than anyone I know." So did Rags have any notes that we can follow for him later?
It's just a concept, open to direction, concept advice.
Concept advice. All right, sweet. So thank you to Rags, and thank you to everyone who supports, listens, donates. Thank you to illexxandra. This is rad. This is going to be our last track of the night. If you're just coming in and being like, I want to submit, we're doing this every 2 weeks right now. And if you join our Discord, discord.gg/EDMP, you get the advanced jump on it because we open up this sheet and you can put your name in and you can get events, notifications, all kinds of goodies. You can even talk to illexxandra. She's in there too. So we're going to listen to Rags' concept and see what we can do for him. And thank you for listening to Feedback and Friends.
Tell heart, don't know how to work, and it's fucked up mind, wanna put it first. All my ambitions, put them in the dirt. All these red flags give me no alert. Did a look, think I had a fourth. Popped a couple puppies, I feel no remorse. Fell out of my mossy just to put it short. Popped a couple puppies, I feel no remorse. Roaches in the corner, a skeleton in the closet. A crooked head on my shoulders, my mind, I think I forgot it. Think it's just hesitation from taking time to recover. Bloody palm in the cupboard, his body under the floorboard. Dead upon arrival, his trial with a made square. Detriment of his father with none of his debonair. Wanted never to die, surprised if I think I could. Trading places with them was something I understood. Wheels turning jet motor, I take kindly to the faith of moving forward. Standing still with bad time about my waist. Line for the finish, but I'm finished being done and fed up. Putting up the animal I become. A scream from the block, exerted with dead lungs. Uttered the words of silence, lavish from ripped tongues. Not father figure, father, go figure. Leaving less longevity, you likely reconsider. Tell heart, don't know how to work, and it's fucked up mind, wanna put it first. All my ambitions, put them in the flash, gave me no alert. Did a look, think I had a fourth. Popped a couple puppies up for no remorse. Fell out of my mossy just to put it short. Popped a couple puppies up for no remorse. Who am I to think of death for I am dead on the inside? Who am I to think of death for I am dead on the inside? Where's my daddy so they never say nothing on the outside? Where's my daddy so they never say nothing on the outside? It's telltale heart, don't know how to work. And it's fucked up mind, wanna put it first. All my ambitions, put them in the dirt. All these red flags gave me no alert. Did a look, think I had a fourth. Popped a couple puppies up for no remorse. Fell out of my mossy just to put it short. Popped a couple puppies up for no remorse. It's telltale heart, don't know how to work. And it's fucked up mind, wanna put it first. All my ambitions, put them in the dirt. All these red flags gave me no alert. Did a look, think I had a fourth. Popped a couple puppies up for no remorse. Fell out of my mossy just to put it short. Popped a couple puppies up for no remorse.
Oh, I didn't know I was gonna go first right away. My main nitpick was the vocal presence. I mean, that's enough to work on, and to work on it would be a big improvement. I'm not trying to contradict the like vocal effect you're going for. Lean into the effect, go for it. But it just, anytime I'm struggling to understand words, but everybody has a different threshold on this. Like a lot of people like are happy to just hear the sound of a voice and don't really care what they're saying. But I think for everyone, like, because you can say this about foreign, like vocals in a language you don't understand. Even if you don't understand the words, if your brain feels like it has to like stretch to hear what the person to hear what the person is saying, even if you don't know what the words are, like I think it's just like one of those like flies buzzing around your head, kind of like things that your brain can't let go of, you know. And I couldn't tell you a single word in that song. I mean, I wasn't like trying to be like, but like, but it shouldn't. But that's actually the point. It shouldn't be like that. It should be really, really easy to know what the person is saying.
Yeah, it's really tough too, because like I know what Rags is going for, that like sort of distorted lo-fi thing, but the advice that I give over and over again is to mix in a little bit of the clean and like really EQ the dirty. So like there's a lot of like ugly, like, you know, the reason we don't love the way that old school telephone calls sound is because a telephone traditionally, and I mean this might be like probably none of these people even know what a real landline sounds like anymore, but you know, it sounds like the telephone effect, which probably doesn't make sense to anyone anymore. I just realized that. But anyways, the reason it's like kind of sucks is that it only passes on a certain narrow range of frequencies, and that's why when you're trying to do a telephone effect, you do this like little peak sort of very notchy exclusive, like only one band of it. And in this case, like it can really either hurt your ears, like there's resonance that you need to reduce so that we're just hearing the idea of the telephone effect, like just like the top end sort of like this floatiness and maybe like, you know, low cut it, but there's a lot of resonance in there that is also part of what's like blocking the understanding of your voice. So I think even like you can keep that like film noir whispery thing, and you could even like whisper a clean layer or something, or like just do it like this, but catch like ASMR, like get the highs, get the clarity, get those intelligibility factors, and that will help. And then other than that, like I think I love that like dark beat concept, but I think that expanding on it would just be really changing the weight of the song throughout, because right now it's got the same weight all the way through. It kind of just keeps going and going and going, and I want to hear a moment where it's like just the drums and the subs and you rapping, or like just your voice with the grinding bass. Like there's so many opportunities to have like moments in the song where it like cuts out and shrinks to just focus on you or to just focus on the percussion.
Yeah, I strongly agree with that.
Yeah. Natty, you're very close up right now. Your face is lovely.
Yeah, my other camera, I forgot to put it on charge, so it died.
Did you have any closing thoughts for Rags' concept?
No, I'll say a thing.
I mean, like there was those screams midway through. I feel like that's actually one of the more interesting elements of the track so far. So maybe see if you're gonna make it all creepy, maybe figure out how to weave screams and shouts and sort of, you know, that kind of aggressive ad libs. Like that's basically what they are. They're ad libs, but you know, make it sort of scary and harsh. I think it might be interesting to seed that throughout the track, give it some flavor.
You had something else you wanted to add?
Oh, I was just gonna speak if he didn't have a thing, but I do have one more brief idea, which is, or not idea, just comment, just praise actually, and not even a criticism. I'm really hypersensitive, critical of like vocals that sound contrived, and it sounded very authentic to me. Like the delivery is very like authentic in my mind. Like I'm not like, yeah, it doesn't sound like a put on.
Yeah, and you know what? Rags is one of the most authentic human beings I know, so it makes sense. And I forgot to say that too. Like the flow itself, even though it was hard to tell what you were saying, like the flow is dope and it like sits in the right place. And so many aspiring rappers are like way too on top of the beat. And like I always tell people to move them. I wouldn't move you at all. You're in the pocket. You're down. So yeah, with that, I think we have half an hour overtime. We've done it. Big shouts out, Nathaniel. Go sleep for like 12 hours. Illexxandra, do you want to just tell people how they can find you online and what you're up to?
Well, is my name on there somewhere? Good. Yeah, just that at everything. I don't have a TikTok. I have everything else. So SoundCloud, Mixcloud, Instagram.
Website.
I don't really use website too. I don't really use Twitter, but like, I mean, Twitter's a sinking ship right now. And so, but I do have one. And then illexxandra.com. And yeah, check me out. I'm probably most active at Instagram these days, but what else? Find me everywhere.
Yeah, and it's not that hard. Illexxandra, 2 X's. It's like Alexandra, but ill. It's a little bit of a joke because some people have a hard time with her name. Some people have a hard time with my name. Them's the breaks. Nathaniel Wyvern, thank you again. Illexxandra, thank you. Everyone still tuned in, thank you. And come back in 2 weeks. We may do this every week again in the summer when people have more time off, but right now we're trying to make it a little more special and give ourselves time to plan even more exciting content. So if you miss us, if you can't bear going 2 weeks without us, you know how to find us, discord.gg/EDMP. That is where we live. That is where we breathe. That is where we sleep. Nathaniel's been sleeping for a week on there. So tune in. We love you. And you know what it's time for? It's time for good night.